Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing great. I can't wait to talk about one of my favorite movies.
Yes, we are returning to Detroit, old Detroit, and for Robocop 2, a return to OCP and its greatest asset of law enforcement. Released in 1990. So sort of 3 years after the original, with the same cast, Peter Weller as Robocop, Nancy Allen, with Belinda Bauer joining, Hillary back, Felton Perry, Tom Noonan joining as Kane, and then many others. Yes, so let's sort of jump in. This is a sort of several years after, well, released 3 years after, but set only a year or so after the events of the first film. Robocop returns to protect the citizens of old Detroit, but faces a deadly challenge when rogue OCP member secretly creates a new evil Robocop 2. That's it in a sort of a nutshell. But Julian, what are your initial thoughts then on Robocop 2?
Well, what a great idea for a sequel. I mean, first of all, this is a great example of a sequel where the title makes sense within the film too. It's not just, RoboCop 2, that's the name of a character, So, I really love that. For me, this movie has a sort of like Back to the Future quality of like every line, every scene is amazing. I love this movie from start to finish. It feels so perfect to me. There are a couple like little quibbles that I have, but they're very minor. It's definitely got a lot of ideas that, are cool and make for good scenes, but don't really necessarily have to be in there. But I love this movie from start to finish. It is over the top. It takes the cynicism and the dirty, just like mean-spiritedness of the first one and ratchets it up to 11.
Yeah, I think the fact that this is directed as well by Irving Kershner is kind of weird because you go, oh yeah, that's Empire Strikes Back. That's sort of like I think the main sort of sci-fi kind of connect a lot of people know. So, but like, to know that this is, like you say, is definitely more over the top and meaner than what Paul Verhoeven gave us is kind of weird, but it's kind of the ones I agree. I do appreciate that mean streak in it. To me, there is. I enjoy this film. I think there's a lot to enjoy in this film. My problem is it's sort of there's an element of it feeling like RoboCop, but not being RoboCop. Like I think that ratcheting it up, it kind of it ups the ante in several places, but kind of misses the mark in others. Like for me, just is kind of like the adverts and the news bulletins. They were an intrinsic part of telling you stuff about the film in the first film, but like in a kind of way. In the adverts, like we said in the last episode, we talked about sort of the heart that they get shown. Is sort of like it's about corporate greed, but it kind of proves that the technology is there to do all this other stuff. The adverts in this one kind of just sort of feel like mean or like I don't know, not sort of as it's not as interwoven as I sort of felt it was in the first film.
That's true. I like them better. But you're right, and I think that's completely fair. And I haven't thought about that a whole lot. So you are completely correct, though. Obviously, I do feel like they're mostly mean, they tell you a lot about where the society is, right?
Oh, yeah.
Uh, I also think this one starts better.
Yes.
They both start with a TV spot, but this one you think it's the movie, and it's a very cheesy movie about a car thief,
Hmm.
except he gets electrocuted and
Yeah.
dies and falls out of the car, and a guy just steps in and drives his car away. And it's an advertisement for, lethal response for car thieves. Why bother with the police? And so, I mean, I think that's very clever. I think this is a much more sort of like tongue-in-cheek, clever movie than the first one, which is a much more serious kind of a little more dead-on sort of
Mm.
film. But that tells you so I like that aspect, but it also sort of tells you exactly where the society has gone, right? Um, it doesn't value life. It's a
Yeah.
very corporate society. Um, I mean, and I love the shift of the news broadcast with like, the I always reference this, the Amazon nuclear power plant has blown its stack, and environments are claiming it's a disaster. But don't they always, on to
Yes.
the next story. It's just mocking of environmental concerns. We're just all of the global war stuff is gone from the
Mm.
first one, which
Hmm.
that didn't serve a plot point. But you're right that there's a lot that does
Yes.
in that first one. Yeah, I guess it does because it's connected to the ED-209 plans, right?
Exactly.
Look,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
look, if I were going to draft a film, I'd make it connect better. But I do think of these over-the-top ones in RoboCop 2 much more than I do the ones in RoboCop 1,
Yeah.
personally.
I do think I like the adverts in Robocop better, but I do like this Magnavolt one. And
Yeah.
this guy is played by John Glover, who would go on to be Lionel Luthor in Smallville, but I know him as Mr. Clamp, or the head of the Clamp Industrial in Gremlins 2, as well as other things.
Hmm.
He just looks like he's got that kind of like salesman sleaziness to him, and he is very good because he does the sort of lethal security. Doesn't even drain your battery, and then he drives off. I mean, it is. I do like that. More than that, though, I think you say about this news segment and stuff, and it talks about the police going on strike, so it does lead into that, which is all cool. So you get that, and you find out like what OCP have actually done as well, which is horrendous. Like they've literally sold off and stopped the police's pension in order to cut costs. And so it is kind of like this is more than probably the first one. There's a real anti-privatization message in this. Like I think the first one's like anti-corporate in general. This is very much about the sort of the exploitation of public services, more so say than the first one. The first one's about like corporate greed and that sort of thing. This has got a message around, I think, the exploitation of public services. Um, but so I do like that. But I do love. I think we sort of slightly referenced it. We might have talked about off air last time. The sequence that follows down the street
Hmm.
as you go to old Detroit, and you have like people being mugged. You have an old woman who's like, who's like her purse is stolen, and then sort of like from her cart, it's got stuff in, and the guy's beaten up by a couple of hookers, and then
I mean, so let's go through this one at a time. This is such a marvel, and it's a continuous shot. It has a cut that's really obvious for the explosion, but it's basically a continuous shot showing like just the devastation of like the crime hellscape.
yeah.
It's like a Republican, this is what Republicans believe that the border looks like or something.
They think this
This
is California. This is what California looks like, to Texans.
this is what Republicans believe, all those no-go areas
Yeah.
all through Europe that they keep hearing about on Fox News that don't exist are like.
Yeah.
So like it starts with like a guy who looks like a businessman robbing a homeless well, first a homeless woman's cart is hit by a driver who
Yeah.
clearly doesn't give a shit about hitting a homeless person. A guy runs over to help in a suit, like a nice, good Samaritan who ends up robbing her.
Yeah.
I don't know. So this already tells you like we're in some mean-spirited hellscape. He's quickly accosted and mugged by two hookers, you know, with other crimes happening in the background
Yeah.
who beat him, kick him in the balls, and then use their high heels to stamp out his
Yeah.
eye. Like, and as they run away to get to use this money to get drugs, the building behind them explodes due to an unrelated
Yeah.
robbery of a gun store.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, we should highlight as well very quickly. This film was written by, or at least the screenplay thing is from Frank Miller. This is very Frank Miller. I mean, also,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that he didn't provide some of like storyboarding for this because the two hookers are dressed like they have walked off the page of Dark Knight Returns. Like,
Yeah.
and some of the
Or Sin
designs,
City or something.
yeah, exactly. Like, and that's that's not a bad thing. Like, it really does. It meets that aesthetic, and it's great.
Oh
Um,
yeah. And I love that stuff. And this is sort of like you know, Miller at his, arguably at his height. I mean, this is,
yes,
before Miller
it
sort
got
of
weird.
goes off into weird territory.
Yeah.
But, where it's anti-corporate and it's sort of Miller, like there was a period where he was doing like controlled Sin City narratives,
Hmm.
the beginning and, like the, big guy and all that stuff. But this is sort of like leaning into that, but it's still the sort of like 80s period where like Dark Knight just has everything thrown into it, but he's still coming from a very anti-corporate sort
Yeah.
of liberal place, but still loves the violence and stuff. And I think this is a great Frank Miller movie, frankly.
No, I think this is it. Well, it's better than The Spirit. Let's put it that way. Um, but yeah, no, I love all this opening scene. I love this whole opening scene because then obviously these guys that then are robbing the gun store, and even say like, it's almost like you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off kind of situation. Like they've used too much explosives. What's left? Um, and there's a guy looking to sort of for the ammunition for his Desert Eagle, and then the guy the guy that works there has been blown up. Tells him, and then he shoots him. It just keeps getting.
Another just means like the
Oh
level
yeah,
of just cruelty, just
yeah.
like it's staggering. I mean, even today.
Oh, it is. I mean, I'd forgotten how mean this. Mean is the word I'll go to for this whole film. Um, and some the dark humor and stuff. But yeah, then of course, sort of as they're doing it, they find they've got like a rocket launcher and all this other stuff, and then he's pressed. I think he's pressed it, but the police have been
The
called.
alarm, yeah,
But the point is, they're saying, well, we can get away with anything. Like the police are on
are on
strike,
strike.
but not every policeman because OCP have got the cop, and so a police car comes skidding around the corner and charges towards them. All looking cool again. Like this is all really cool stuff. And then one of the guys brings out the rocket launcher and takes out the car. It's like flips over, blows up, and then lands. And to really sort of bring it home, they then fire a bazooka into it just to be sure.
And then begin machine gunning it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we're 6 minutes in, and it's like
Oh,
this is
yeah.
staggering.
And then they think they're done, and then the door sort of opens, and all you see is RoboCop's foot come out, and the music. Can I say I applauded the score in the last film. I love that the sort of like but the score in this is just as good.
I agree. Yeah.
Can't fault it. Love the score to this film, and the Robo theme is exceptional.
And this
But
is
yeah.
a great reintroduction of RoboCop,
Oh
right? I
yeah,
mean, not only the cops are on strike, but also like you see his foot, then you see him. He's taken all this damage, in the car. This is like society has come unglued, and RoboCop is the thin blue line, baby.
Mm.
Like it is over the top, but it's masterfully done.
Oh yeah. No, he steps up. I love his new suit. He's not.
Hmm.
It's not designed any differently, but it has a sort of a blue
Hmm.
hue to it and stuff, and like some accents in the sort of the coloring and stuff. And I love that. I think it just looks ace. Like it
I feel the
looks
same
good.
way. And I feel like this one is the definitive suit for me.
Yeah,
Not just because of my love of RoboCop 2, but also because there are those sort of like odd purpley sections in one where they've
yeah.
got, sort of purple instead of blue. So it's a little strange to me. I do have a personal anecdote, which is that I went to see this movie in theaters,
Mm.
and I was 13, and
Yeah.
I went to see it with my parents.
Frank
I'm
Miller's
13,
target audience.
and yes, I was a 13-year-old boy, and I went to see RoboCop 2, and my parents, I remember during this opening sequence, turned to each other and said, as and they said, "What have you taken?" Like my mom said, "Like what are you taking, and what did you take us to? We have made a terror. Is this okay for?" They said something like, "Is this okay for Julian to see?"
Yeah.
Like horse just they said ripped out a guy's eye.
Yeah.
Like I think that's what got them. It was like, what are we in for? What have we done to our son? We did not expect it to be this bad.
This is what we've come to in 1990 is this. This is yeah. It is. I mean, it is in your face. I mean, this film is very much sort of like it kind of is unabashedly sort of like violent and not going to like apologize for being doing certain things. And I applaud that. I do. That's one of the things I do applaud about this film. Um but yeah, he sort of brings them down and sort of like that's your as you said, like, Robo sort of like they're shooting at him. He brings out the gun and sort of shoots at them and stuff. And you say this is that kind of thing of like you've had the origin film in the first one, and so they've got to reintroduce the hero as a badass and like in quick order, and this works incredibly well. Um, and so yeah, I think this is really cool. This whole listen from the opening to this point, I am 100% in. I'm all in on this, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Um, and you then reintroduced to sort of like Officer Lois. She sort of is Nancy Allen is sort of she's also not on strike because she's partnered with RoboCop. Um, and then it kind of shifts. This is where it's sort of like that's like an episode of like, oh, that's awesome, that's really cool. And then they sort of like, but now we've got to address the whole rest of the plot. And I can't remember like, if it goes to Kane at this point, but you get to meet they have to reintroduce all the other characters like OCP and those sorts of things. And so
Yeah, you get
it's
OCP, you get this discussion of like the well, OCP is, underfunding the police department. New you have a lot of, Nuke has already been introduced in the TV sequence, um, and referenced in the violent stuff at the beginning.
mm,
So we know there's this drug nuke, and that Kane is introduced briefly. It's a little absurd that like they keep saying like, and this just in, like we just got a video from Kane, and if his video is like has nothing to do with the attack. I mean, there's some clumsiness there, but yeah, so we know Kane is ravaging the city. We get the meeting about the RoboCop 2 program, which is over budget and all of that. And we get the pretty soon we get the corrupt cop. Um,
Duffy. Yeah.
yeah, Duffy.
Well, I think this is where it kind of it's this bit where I'm kind of reminded, and this is where this is the problem I have with this film. We know when I said sort of like if I have RoboCop, this is like RoboCop. There's almost like an authenticity issue with this film. Like the first film has got Ronnie Cox, who I always enjoy. I think he was great as Dick Jones. You had Miguel Ferrer as Bob Morton, and Kurtwood Smith as Bodica. So you had this kind of trinity of villains going on as that were just I thought were great. Like they work really well, and they sort of act as that kind of like the villain piece of this of what's going on. The corporate villainy that's going on. And I don't think that's matched in this film because you do have the old man again as Dan Harrelay, but then Johnson, played by Felton Perry, like he always feels like an underling. Like he was an underling in the first film, and he continues to feel like an underling in this film. And so I never buy him as being sort of an executive and all this other stuff. He doesn't feel sort of as sleazy as Morton did in Bob Morton's Miguel Ferrer in the first one. And then you have the solicitor, the lawyer, what was his name? Holzgang, played by Jeff McCarthy, and he's fine, but again, he kind of feels like a replacement for the other characters, and so this sort of the villainy of OCP never feels as charismatic or as cool, I think, as it did in the first film, and that's kind of like they feel like stand-ins for better characters. Um,
I disagree completely.
oh,
I
okay,
do think that the American Psycho sort of like boardroom stuff is absent here.
yes,
Um, and you get some of that with Johnson and Jones in the first one. But in terms of the cast of characters, I think Johnson is a little more of a toady in this one, but
mm-hmm,
you certainly see by the end. I mean, and he tries to cut off the RoboCop 2 pro. I mean, he seems like he's sort of like a loyal toady in this one, but he's
yeah,
also a schemer. I mean, he's a yes man, but
mm,
he does have corporate interests at heart. But he is a corporate schemer. I mean, he knows how to throw someone under the bus. We see at
oh
the
yeah,
end, right?
yeah.
I mean, like he is vicious too. I mean,
Mm.
he's
Well,
very
he's more
familiar with
Weasley.
this
He's
environment.
less. Bob Morton was ballsy in
Yeah,
what he did, wasn't it? Like
yeah.
Johnson's more of a weasel kind of
But here we
sly.
have, yeah, you're right, and so that like American Psycho sort of boardroom element is gone, but here we have the psychiatrist, who we
Mm.
have less of the corporate, intrigue, but we have the psychiatrist
She
character who
feels she
is
feels like a Frank.
fascinating.
Yeah, but she feels like a
Oh,
Frank Miller character. Like
she's
she is.
straight out of Dark Knight,
Yeah,
that has the psychiatrist saying the Joker is the victim and all this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Frank Miller clearly in the 80s had a
yeah.
problem with
Not
psychiatry.
not a fan of psychiatry. Yeah, Frank Miller. Clear, like
Uh,
yeah, she is. It's yeah, interesting character though, fascinating character.
but then I think Kane and this crew of villains is so much better characterized and batting 1,000. Kane is over the top, but I
Hmm.
think the fact that you have the kid and you have the girlfriend and you have Kane who's got this Jesus complex, like it's definitely over the top. This feels a little more superhero villains,
Oh, it
than the
feels
first
yeah,
one.
yeah.
But
That's where I'm
but
going with it.
all those villains work. Like, and for me, compared to the first one, like the first one is in some sense, you could say it's a more serious movie, but you could
Mm.
also say like both that villain and the corporate villain and the gangster villain both sort of feel like, well, they're well acted, they're fine, they look like regular guys, it's fine, but it's not. I don't know. They don't stand out for me.
Mm.
They're not iconic to me. Kane feels iconic, to me. I love the psychiatrist feels iconic to me.
Yeah.
I love this cast of characters. So
I,
for me, I like even Kane's group, core group. You have all those guys in the first one, you don't even know their names. I mean, they're thrown out of cars and killed off really quickly.
okay. You. I'm glad you said this feels a little bit more like a superhero film. I can't help feeling that Batman '89 had an influence on this film.
Yeah.
And because of exactly what you've just said, like, not, I don't think they were going like, oh, we're going to go Tim Burton-esque or anything like that. The suit feels, as we said, I love the RoboCop suit. I love the sort of that blue hue that goes with it. I think but it feels a bit more like a suit, like a robo, like a super suit kind of thing. It's still his body. I get all that, and it looks cool. But Tom Noonan as Kane, as it feels like a superhero villain. There's that
Well, he
sort of
plays
like,
it more arch, right?
yes, and
Uh,
yes,
I mean, and one of my, I don't know. I mean, sometimes we really like in general sort of small stakes
mm,
stories, but like RoboCop is not a full small stake story. I mean, you're
no,
building a cyborg, and Detroit's under threat, and
yeah,
all of
yeah,
this. It's not, and the villain, the criminal villain in one, just feels kind of like low key and incompetent. And I mean, I like him. I think he's well played, but he just feels like sort of like medium level gangster,
mm,
And Kane does feel like more like the Joker, right? I mean,
mm.
he's more
He's a cult
flamboyant, he's
leader.
arch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, definitely this is leaning into that arch over the top element. but I feel like you know, I mean, I feel like he's a more deserving sort of like villain for RoboCop than you know, a gangster who kind of robs banks.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. I agree. Like it, but it is taking a. It's leaning into the the reason I say that, the reason that we said that, the reason. Let me put it this way. One of the things that we discussed last week was that RoboCop dismantled, or we felt sort of kind of dismantled the superhero or the hero narrative. You know, sort of like it does all this stuff. He's recognizing because, but he never actually wins. Like he's still a part of the system. He's still an asset of OCP. You know, he kind of gets to take his revenge, but he doesn't get to go home to his family. I want to talk about the family stuff in a minute, but like, do you know what I mean? So we kind of said like, oh, you're sort of tricked into thinking you've seen a superhero victory, but actually you haven't. Do
Well,
you know what I mean? Like you know, and this
right
film sort of goes, oh no, no,
to put
no,
that
we're
in
going to go
slightly
straight into a superhero narrative.
well, to put that in slightly different terms, like one of the core problems with the superhero narrative is that, Superman and Spider-Man stop bank robbers and people in costume suits.
Yeah.
They really just enforce the status quo.
Yes.
And so you celebrate the fact that like the Scorpion's been beat yet again, and the fact that like, there's homelessness
Yeah.
and, corporate shenanigans going on and all of that when drug abuse and all of this will never be addressed. RoboCop 1 shines this face, you can't ignore that, right? It
Yeah.
puts a spotlight on that. But
Yeah.
I feel that 2 does that even better. I know what you're saying about it being like it, you're right. It is more superhero-y, it is more
Mm.
comic booky and it's villains. But and it's over the top, sort of element. But by the end,
Oh yes, I agree with
there's
you.
no confusion.
Yeah.
Like it's a Pyrrhic victory. OCP is like I think OCP is clearly more evil in this one than in the first one.
Yes. Oh no, I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's some of the stuff I really like. And I think that's the thing because I'm not saying I dislike this film at all. I actually
Yeah.
quite like it, but there are things where I'm going like, oh, and I think it's saved by, like you said, the very not to jump around, but you're right. At the end of the film, after everything, like Lois actually says, like, well, they're still going to get away with it, and he says, well, in time, we're only human, and kind of like there's a joke about that. But so I know what you're saying. I agree, but I feel like it's more. I don't know.
Well,
It's that thing
let
about
me
we were just talking about this off air actually, sort of having your cake and eating it a little bit. This film kind of does a little bit of that, where it's like, oh, we want to have the superhero narrative, but then also kind of poke fun or sort of highlight the issues with it. But I don't think it does it enough to really sort of like do its service. But I get what you're saying. By the end of the film, I think it does.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that if I have problems with Kane, it's that um my question is like, has he invented Nuke? Like
Mm.
he is producing Nuke. It's the only drug, like, I see these like perfect dispensers for this fluid that are like these plastic molded dispensers, and I'm like, did you pay for molding? And like, what
Yeah.
factory is producing these plastic containers? Like, drugs are usually manufactured with very little, very primitive
I love
processes.
a little like flip case that you can keep your
Yeah.
usage in. Very neat, wonderfully
No,
neat.
I this is like the corporate version of a
Yeah.
drug dealer where it's like, we have a new product line for you. It's called Nuke. It comes in this nice case. Check out, our bling. And if you want
Mm.
the limited edition Nuke dispenser, yeah, like it's available with a subscription package. Like it is overly, it is a little ridiculous for that.
Well,
And I wonder, did he invent this? Is
yeah.
all Nuke is ravaging the country, if not the world? It's not just Detroit. Why is he stationed in Detroit? Did he? I mean, it
It,
doesn't explore all of this. I'm willing to kind of blink and ignore it, but
well,
it builds him up as this big villain.
yeah.
But it starts the movie. He's already done all these things. It's not really important to the plot. You just have to know there's this new designer drug and he's a drug lord. But behind the scenes, I do kind of have always had these questions.
No, I think it's fine. I mean, the things we should. There are two things worth highlighting is, although Frank Miller wrote this, this wasn't the full script. Like his original draft was cut down quite heavily, and a lot of that turns up in three. Um, and I can't help but think that there is a draft or an idea somewhere where Kane and this drug manufacturing is linked to OCP and their plans to destabilize old Detroit.
Hmm.
And that's always, for years, that's always felt like a link that's been missing. Where, like, you know, from what you've said, feels even more so now. Where I'm like, oh yeah, OCP should be like, there should be a scene where like they look in the drug lab and it's like, you know, property of OCP or something like that, where they're like, oh, it's quite
There's a
clear that
little
like,
logo.
yeah, like he's getting certain equipment and tech from OCP, and this is part of the plan to destabilize old Detroit. Like it would make more, that would kind of make sense. So I do feel there should be more of a link there, like, you know, full circle. All this comes full circle. Like, you know, this thing of Kane being used for RoboCop 2, like, well, he was always in the service of OCP. Like, you know, this almost feels should
Mm.
feel almost feel inevitable. Um, but yeah, no, I do what you're saying again, but it's over the top. It is over the top. Like having the boy, the young boy, there's the drug dealer, and he's sort of
I
very
love the
sort of,
boy.
yeah,
I,
he's
I,
cool.
I, I
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, the boy is great. He's so I think of him all the time. I mean, he's just an iconic villain to me. Um, and he's so emblematic of the meanness of this film.
yeah,
The drug dealer has, his has a Jesus complex, has this girlfriend, and then has this kid, vicious kid as the henchman. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a dark, corrupt
mm,
world we are in.
yeah. And I'm fine. You know, I like some of all that stuff. And what I like about it, one the thing I want to say is the reason I think this is kind of cool, and I hadn't thought about this until I watched it this time round. As you get to know Kane and his, let's call them, I don't know, family, like he's got this boy that he's corrupting and shaping and all this other stuff, forming into his protege almost. Like, you know, because at one point later on, when they're going to torture Duffy, like he makes him watch the torture.
Mhm.
And then you have this girlfriend that he's sort of like, you know, he's basically sort of dependent on his drugs and but hangs around and she's very attractive and all this other stuff. Is that Kane has got the things that Robocop wants. So because you've then got the sort of the short. I wish they did more of this, but like then you have the fact that like Robocop goes to his wife's house and sort of hangs out outside in the car, and so they have the scene where the lawyer that we this is quite early on, like, you know, Wolf, what his name is, let's call him Wolfgang Holzgang, is there with RoboCop and stuff, and then another lawyer for the Murphy family, and sort of like they're saying like, you know, what are you? And he's having to say, I'm RoboCop, I'm an asset of OCP, and then she comes in, and there's the heartbreaking scene where she's sort of like, you know, she refers to him and she says, you know, touch him and touch my, you know, touch me. And she touches his face. She's like, it's cold. He's like, and he says the line, they made this to honor him. And then she sort of runs off, and I'm like, that is, it's. I mean, it's. You talk about the film being mean, and you're just like, fuck. Like he has to turn away. He has to turn away the family that like he sees Kane having. So there's also this parallel between Kane and RoboCop, and so yeah, it's so much that makes it really cool. So I like that sort of element.
I hadn't thought about that parallel with family. But of course you're right. That's totally there. I was going to say earlier, like when you were talking about like we're talking about how to compare this to one, and that it's kind of like exaggerated
Yeah.
and a little superhero-y or whatever. I think exaggerated is the term.
Mm.
And like it feels like it's not a parody of itself any more than one is, but it feels like
Oh, no.
everything is heightened to
Yes.
me
Yes.
in a way that I really love. Like everything is just heightened. And so, yes, it's a really mean world, but even the emotional scenes are heightened. So
Mm.
like one, in one, that he's sad about his wife, but you don't see a heartbreaking scene, right? You
Yeah.
don't follow up with her. Here, that stuff is brutal and
Yeah.
devastating, right?
Yeah.
Even the kid's death scene is
Oh.
brutal and
Yeah.
devastating. Like this has more heart to it. It's just that like those emotional, heartfelt scenes, they work, but they're again just very heightened and
Mm,
uh, not exaggerated into like some kind of parody superhero territory or something, but it just feels like everything has been rendered in this like, chiaroscuro, way that and I love that. I mean, this movie has heart. It gets at that pain of RoboCop. It gets at, uh, that stuff for me better than one does, where one
mm,
sort of feels a little emotionless in places. I mean, there are times where I'm like, yeah, I should be feeling more about this, like this is well done, but I'm
yeah.
kind of like a little detached from, you know, uh RoboCop's pain or the
Mm,
the characters and what they're feeling. Here, everybody's kind of wearing what they're feeling on their chest. And that scene, what always gets me is how they get RoboCop to do this. I mean,
mm.
he's been stalking his wife,
Yeah.
ex-wife, right? Um, and they don't show the kid, right? Who it's established she's had in one. And it's not really clear because in one she's moved away, so I guess she's like in the suburbs or something.
Mm. You
Is he
see the
taking the car
yeah,
like all the way out to the suburbs
yeah.
every day to stalk her?
You do see the kid briefly on the front lawn and stuff, don't you? So you know that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I really love how they get him to. They say like, are what kind of life do you imagine you're going to have with her? You
Mm,
know, do you think you can fulfill what she wants? Like and really just those are just the heartbreaking lines for me that make him realize it's crystal clear. It makes him realize she's better off without me. And what I'm
yeah.
doing is hurting her. And even though in the first one, it's not really clear that it is Alex Murphy. Here, it's much more suggested. It's much more clear that is
Mm,
Alex Murphy, and he realizes, no, she's better off without me, and I need to stop doing this, and I need to this is like the end of Spider-Man 1 where he walks away, right? Which I
yeah.
admire that film for, except this is earlier on, he knows I have to free her from having anything to do with this monstrosity that
Yeah.
I've become, and it's really heartbreaking.
No, I think you're right. I think this I love this scene. I think it's really well done. And I think one of the things I want to again, and I will definitely applaud this film for is its special effects. Some of its practical effects are, and we'll get to some really disturbing special effects in a bit. But one of the things we sort of said in the first one is once he takes his helmet off, like it's that thing of the face being. We were like, what's under the skin? Like how much of the skull is there, and all that kind of stuff. And it's almost more played up in this. Like in the first film, it's kind of like not so much a straight line, but there's more of a divide between here's the face, it stops here. Here's the sort of the rest of the robotic head. This one's less clear cut. Like it feels like there's hooks, almost like Hellraiser-esque. Like there's things
Oh
in the
yeah.
skin pulling it taut, and holding it in place. Like this feels grotesque. And so he has that mask off. He's got his helmet off, and it's just that bare face, and you can see the bullet wound in his forehead and stuff where he was shot. And then when he's talking to her, like I can imagine it being traumatic that like this is your husband's face talking back at you, but there's nothing else there. Um, so yeah, no, it is. It's very very well done.
Yeah, and I really love that this comes earlier. Like,
Mm.
I mean there could be more like look, this is a side plot, right? It's not really important to the overall story, but it's so well done.
Mm.
Like, and there are a lot of things like this where I'm just like, I think of these scenes all the time. Like this scene as he's, saying these things to her, and these specific lines of dialogue. It's so well done. And I love that we see that face, right? And like you say, it looks grotesque, but we don't see it at the end. Like
Hmm.
RoboCop 1 has the traditional arc of the hero's mask gets ripped and you
Yeah,
see his
yeah.
face at the end. And that works. That's a classic model. It's a classic model because it works. That's great for a first movie. Here we're in the second movie, we still get to see him without his face, but it's for in the service of this astounding, heartbreaking scene, and he's going to have his helmet on through the rest of the movie.
Well, apart from
Which,
one point, which is
well, right,
again
yeah,
in service of the horror,
yeah,
and that's why I think
yeah,
it's cool. And you're right though. You are right though. I just want to sort of hammer. I just want to just really sort of wrap up this family point though. That you know, because this scene, what you said about the sacrifice that RoboCop's willing to make is that like, what kind of husband can I be, or what kind of father can I be? I have to let them go. I have to let them live the life and go meet other people and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to Kane, who kills both his, you know, let's, I don't know, family, his sort of a, you know, I don't know what a relation they really are, but his son and girlfriend slash wife, whatever figure, like he turns on them and kills them
Yeah.
without
Now
compunction.
they've turned on him too.
Yes, yeah,
But yeah, you're right. I mean, if he were in RoboCop's place, he'd say, "Well, if I can't have my wife and kid, nobody's gonna have my wife and kid. I'm gonna, instead of stalk them, go to their house and murder them."
that's yeah, tear the world down. So I do, you know, it's one of those things I hadn't really thought about until this watching. I was like, oh, that seems kind of like, you know, the book ending that thing. Um, but you know, I'm trying to remember when it's what we get to these other bits because the other thing I want to touch on is the film starts to set up the plots, doesn't it, as you throughout the first sort of part. So you do you sort of like you get some like wrap ups with the family and stuff, and you've met Kane and you've seen him, and he's been introduced, and the drug, which I forget what it's called,
Nuke.
Nuke, thank you, has been introduced, and you've seen that people are addicted to it, and that Duffy is using it, and all this other stuff. And then then it sets up the OCP story plot of the creation of RoboCop 2 with, and I kind of like come, you know, I flip flop on this. Did Iron Man 2 ever try and steal this? I mean, surely they must have. But you get the montage of the failed RoboCop 2s, none of which are good, by the way. Like they're all kind of crap designs, but I love this kind of failure that they
I
have.
love
This,
the designs. I mean, they're not A level,
no,
designs. I mean, the first one is really like bulky and much more like, like a robo judge kind of like imposing
yeah,
sort of design. And then the second one is more like a skinny, like maybe that model is sort of like designed to sprint. And I do wonder, like, how much have you paid these guys to design full new RoboCops every single time?
and
Yeah, but
the
both
third
of us,
one's closer to what Kane becomes as well, which is kind of
yeah.
interesting.
Well, both of us love this sequence. I
Yeah.
mean, this is a stunning, I mean, gentlemen, I give you RoboCop, and the fanfare goes, and he pulls, he says, what does he say? Like, uh, you're committing. It's like sort of a repeat of ED 209, just like super fast. Like, you're committing a crime. He just pulls out a gun and shoots the scientist, and
Yeah,
then
I love the fact that
shoots himself in the head.
I love the fact it then cuts to the scientist sat in the chair and he sort of like holds his arm. He's got his arm in a sling and he's kind of like, yeah, that wasn't good.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then it goes to the next one and he comes out and they're sort of like, yeah, again, dun, 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 and it pulls the thing off the skull in its head. Seems like a bad design that it could do that, but and then the skull screams and it just keels over. Um, all this is, by the way, is like stop motion animation. It's all done with things like, it's brilliant. Again, I'm loving this animation. I think it's fantastic. I've just got such a fondness for this style of animation.
I agree completely. I mean, I think from the special effects perspective, it's stunning.
Yeah.
It's also just
Yeah.
brilliantly weird and mean-spirited and violent. And presumably these are other cops who have died
Mm,
that they put their brains in these suits, and their response is to commit suicide at the earliest possible
yeah.
opportunity. And you think, my God, like what have they done to these people? It only accentuates like what RoboCop has been through in the first
Mm,
film. I just think, yeah, I mean, it boggles my mind the implications of this stuff.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it really sort of like you say, hammers home that kind of the horror and the like, because the things you forget about, like you forget that like, although Murphy or Robocop can walk and do all this other stuff, like he has zero sensation. Like he can't feel anything in his hands or like in his body, and he's just a metal and plastic sort of encasement. He has no sensation, You know, he has no pleasure, he has no taste, he can't. All that's gone. So yeah, like you know, it makes you realize that this is horrific, absolutely horrific. And then you have the psychiatrist who says Murphy was a success because of his dedication to duty, his Catholic upbringing. He's got these sort of his personality type kind of suggests he's kind of obsessive about certain things. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, and this sort of failure of these other models, what a great antidote to all of these shows, like every Doctor Who episode where they download a consciousness and it's in some like weird holographic, like I'm inside a little box now, but I'm ready to assist you. It's like, no, you're gonna go through an existential crisis. You're like, the first thing you're gonna hear out of that box is delete me.
yeah,
Like delete me, please. So I mean, like Cliff Steele in Doom Patrol gets at this a
hmm
little bit, like
yeah,
but I mean, Concrete,
mm.
Dark Horse Comics, like he still lusts even though he's in this giant shell. Um, so I love this deconstruction stuff.
Yes,
And it's violent and wonderful, and it brings all the panache. It's visually wonderful, but it's got an
well,
idea. And I love this. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. This idea that like this focus on duty, that like cops are not the ideal model
no,
necessarily, right? They're, macho, body proud, this is probably not, like we got lucky with Murphy. I'm completely convinced by this explanation.
oh no, I agree. I think this again is a really strong part of the film when, and also you know going back to this idea of the superhero narrative, we've kind of been you know, the this wave, especially with the Spider-Man and other things, is kind of like anyone can be the hero. You know, you can all be Spider-Man. You can all be thinking this is going like, no, 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 no. You can't. You are not psychologically strong enough to do this. It would destroy you. You know, Murphy is a special case. You cannot be RoboCop. And I kind of love that it's kind of like this isn't for everyone. Like it, as you said, like there's an existential crisis, and just the horror of it of going like, no, this is not a superhero narrative. This is not something to be admired. This is not sort of like you know something to be aspired to. This is a body horror at its best. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, and taking it back to the superhero, right? Like, you're right about like Spider-Man and all the stuff. And these narratives present to us that sort of like anyone can acquire these powers and then they become superheroes. And I think RoboCop 1 is sort of like that. I mean, it's Murphy's first day on the job,
Hmm.
there's not an awful lot that separates him. Um, he's just the guy they do it to. He's a cop and we put him in a robot body,
Yeah,
right? That's it. But there's always this question of like, well, why haven't they repeated that? I mean, if all you need is a radioactive spider, why aren't there legions of,
mm.
I mean, if all you need is a suit of armor, you got lots of them. Why isn't there a legion of Iron Men,
Yeah,
invading Iraq or whatever? Um, and so this movie sort of addresses that and answers that, and I think in a really convincing way. Um, and also a way that's really fun and
mm.
woven into the heart of that narrative. So I really
Yeah,
dig that, it's like, what's RoboCop 2? Why it's, 2 years later in narrative. Why don't we have, a bunch of RoboCops on
yeah,
duty?
yeah.
Like that's a question you have to answer that most of these superhero movies never bother to answer.
No,
RoboCop 2 bothers to answer it. And again, I think in an
it gives a good
amazing,
answer. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree, and I love that, and because it then sets up the psychiatrist, um, uh, Dr. Fax, to go off, and sort of like she gets given the sort of the remit then to find someone new because she's like, we're looking in the wrong place. Let me go find someone who's better suited. Um,
And when you next see her, they're flipping through death row
yeah,
inmates, which makes sense, right?
yeah,
They'll
yeah.
be, but I love the horror of this. Of like, you're talking about putting a death row inmate into a, exo robotic suit that's
But
designed to murder.
I love that the robotics guy is going like, this is crazy. Like, this is insane. Like, he exactly as you're saying. It's like, you can't put these people in this suit. Like it's not, what are you doing? And this is where you do get some of that corporate sort of like, um, pulling the sort of rank and sort of stuff. And because she knows she's got much more influence, she's got the old man's ear and all this other stuff. So she's able to sort of say like, you'll do as I say.
But also this is this has dated very well to me. This is, like her response is like, well, I mean, no, I'm thinking outside of the box, basically.
Mm,
And, this makes sense. It may, you are constrained by old thinking, and ultimately you're going to do your job or be fired, right?
yes. Yeah.
Um, but I think about, like move fast and break things at Facebook.
Mm,
I mean, we currently have, presumably because of Elon Musk's influence, government giving permit for people to drill holes in the heads of people's skulls and implant microchips in their brains so that they can play video games and do things like this, which, by the way, you can do with electrodes already,
yeah.
right? This is not, and, lo and behold, you know what happens? Those microchips inserted into brains need maintenance. They also are
Hmm.
prone to infection.
Yeah.
This is a nightmarish scenario, but we're moving ahead with it
Mm,
because corporate influence, and why not, right? So, I mean, I think this is, oddly dated,
yeah. Oh no, it feels very
pretty well.
prescient in yeah, I think it is. It's kind of spot on. Um, but it then leads into another thing which I feel is um incredibly Frank Miller, but also kind of prescient is after everything, like Robocop decides, he tracks down I think he uses Duffy, but he tracks down Kane. Um at this point I can't think to the order of things, but I think that's this, and he goes after them, doesn't he? And sort of you get the shootout and um you get the first shootout where he attempts to bring down Kane. Um and so like, he goes in, the car gets blown up. You get Elvis, they've got an Elvis body in there. Like it's kind of just
That's very Frank Miller, right?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And I kind of love that because you've got the
I do
rockabilly
too.
kind of guy that's there that's clearly like his thing. Um
It's so weird and it
yeah.
doesn't need to be there, but
No.
I'm a sucker for all of these points of like how we've turned celebrities into modern gods.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sort of always I love like in Tommy where you have like the Church of Marilyn Monroe.
Hmm.
I love that kind of stuff. So this is weird. It kind of fits into his god complex.
Yes.
Uh, but yeah, it's weird. It's really weird. But also like you have a statue, like you have a painting of Mother Teresa,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then like all this Catholic imagery, like it's
Yeah.
super bizarre.
I
Like
love
this
the
guy
fact that
is
even like Robocop's weirded out. Like he walks past the Elvis body and you can see like even he stops and he's like, yeah, this is fucked up. Like this is weird. Of all the things that's going on, this is weird. Um, but anyway, he confronts he tracks around, confronts Kane, and um, basically is defeated. Like he's shot at and knocked over, electrocuted, and has his arm shot off by a
Well,
machine gun, and then is knocked over, and so on and so forth.
let's be clear. I mean, you think this is RoboCop. I mean, this is what he's done in the first movie. Like
Yeah, it just
he's
stormed
the
in.
guy who it just storms in, and he's the one who's brave enough on the police force to just go after
Hmm.
the main bad guy. And so there's every expectation of this is RoboCop. He's going to be successful. He's holding a gun pointing at Kane, and then his hand gets blown off,
Yeah,
and there's a kid with a Gatling gun, and you're
yeah,
like, like, oh shit, RoboCop's just got his hand blown off for the first time in the franchise, and a kid is done.
Well, no,
Like
you say the first time. That's the same hand that gets the first thing that Bodicker did in the first film was blow Murphy's hand off.
right. Well, but that's the flesh hand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is the first time that RoboCop. So
Yes.
this is
But
to
it's the
me the
same hand. But it's
sequence.
the same hand that Murphy lost in that shootout, which is
That's true.
yeah.
And for me, the sequence is duplicating for RoboCop the death of Alex Murphy.
Yes.
And it is like even more brutal because he's in this indestructible body.
Yeah.
Like I remember like this stuck with me. Like they're jackhammering him. They're like, get it into the joints,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's coming off.
it's like the Alex Murphy death sequence if he were a superhero and couldn't die. And so they're just using like I mean, it's like James Roberts Transformers stories where it's like,
Mm.
oh, they're tough guys. You have to torture them and mess them up in
Yeah.
ways that are appalling. And here we're getting that stuff. I mean, and I think this sequence of the dismantling of RoboCop is
Well,
really upsetting.
it is. I mean, this is the thing of like, we've talked about this, previously. Like, he has no sensation, but he is conscious and he's awake throughout all this. And you just see, like, it has that thing of robo vision, so you see it through his eyes. And the guys there, like you say, with the jackhammer, and they sort of move it over. Then they've got the buzz saw, and they're cutting him in half. And at one point, like they've broken some wires, and there's some sort of like kind of fluid coming out, and like the kids spraying it in like Robo's face and stuff like that. Like, oh, it's dark. Like it's really weird and gross. But this next bit, and this is where I applaud this. This has stayed with me since the first time I saw this in the early 90s. Like this has really bothered me since I was sort of a kid and I first saw this. They take Robo's parts and they just basically chuck them out of a limo as it sort of drives past the police station, and all the police are still there protesting and all this other stuff. And then you see it like the legs still moving, but you get like the torso and then the unhelmeted head doing this like and it's got this sort of like it's going off. The eyes are rolled back in its head and it's on a breathing. And you hear the police, all these cops are like, "Oh shit!" Like it's one of us. Like despite the strikes, like they still kind of respect RoboCop. And that body,
Yeah.
when it's then hanging up and it goes into the thing, and it's just having an electric impulse just to keep and it's doing that, and his head's moving back. Like that's all, that's all a puppet. That's just, it's brilliant. Like
Yeah.
it is traumatizing how brilliant that thing is. Like it's bothered me. Like, oh no, like I can't say how good I think the special effects are. The modeling in this bit is fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and they say like he's in hell, and the OCP people say, oh, he's a machine, like
Yes.
we don't get. I mean, and this takes that element from one and just takes it so much further. Like one is super violent, and you have the murder sequence and all this stuff.
Mm.
Already at this point, we've taken that body horror so much further, and
Yeah.
so the pain of being in the cyborg body. You've got to distance yourself from the wife that you love. You've
Yeah.
got dismantled, you're in this, this you could be prolonged in this kind of like hellscape, twitching, near death. I mean, this is really taking all of those elements from one to that next level and not flinching, really giving you the whole means, unflinching terrible reality, which again, so different from all these other movies where you have brains and consciousnesses
Just
stuffed into
accepting
stuff.
it.
It's no problem,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's it. And I agree. I think so. This section has always kind of bothered me because you are like, this
Bothered
is.
you in a good way.
Oh
Yeah.
but like, yeah, bother me in the sense
Traumatized
of
you.
like, yeah, like it has because you're like, because you do especially when Holtzgang sort of like he's there. That's the lawyer. It's just these little bits. Like he reaches up and just sort of like flicks off a bit of dirt off Murphy's face, but it's kind of like he's just pushing dust off a machine. Like it means nothing to him. And just little things like that are really kind of like, as you say, like they're like, oh, they don't give a hoot about this thing. Like they do not see the humanity in Murphy. He's just a machine. Um, and so
That
that
flicking
whole, oh, go on.
that little gesture there is emblematic for me of this film in general. Because
Mm,
for me, like, you don't need that. For me, this movie, every line of dialogue, every gesture is, again, like that's exaggerated, right? In that one gesture, you get, you know, what's happening here, right?
mm.
It communicates so much. And it's exaggerated, but it's so fast. It does that, it moves on. You get these, great lines of dialogue about, he's in hell, he's in pain, Um, yeah.
No, I think yeah, and that's it. I think it works really well. And then we've seen already in the film at the beginning of the film, just to remind you, they've given you his three directives. They've shown da 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 da. So that you remember his, uphold the law, protect the innocent. I forgot the third one is, but like
Obey the public trust.
that's it. Yeah, that's it. So
Protect.
you've seen that those three key objectives, those key three directives, and one of the things that Fax has been talking about is, well, they drive his behavior. They drive what he does. And so they see this as an opportunity to not only are they trying to do their own Robocop 2, they're going to use to modify the behaviors of Robocop. So what do? They have like a group session to talk about the things that he does and doesn't do. And this film makes me this section makes me laugh. Like it legit makes me laugh because I've seen this. Like I've been in like workshops and things where people are given ideas and like you're sat there going like, these ideas are terrible, but someone's writing these down, and I'm unfortunately thinking these are going to end up in like someone's suggestion box, kind of thing. Um. So yeah, no, I think this bit is very funny, very good when they're like, you know,
It's very corporate.
yes,
Well, these students who aren't attending class, isn't this really the teacher's fault? Maybe they could give away candy.
yeah,
Maybe they could, have a party every day, and kind of encourage these students. It's like the student threatened me with a gun. Like what are you talking about? Uh, and of course, it's very Dark Knight, which
yes,
has that Dr. Hoffer or whatever her name is, who's like, Batman is the cause, we need, Batman needs to be doing all these good things. Except I love that this is the justification for rebuilding RoboCop.
hmm,
I love that they say like he's off warranty,
yeah,
like, we're under no contractual obligation to rebuild him, and he's kind of obsolete, but they decide that it's worth rebuilding him as a PR move, especially because they're going to load him with, all these, liberal feel good kind of touchy feely directives,
yeah, and it's
which
things like,
leads into another brilliant sequence. And again,
yeah,
like this is just much like the sequence with his wife, it doesn't really need to be there in some
mm-mm.
sense, but it's so memorable, it's so brilliantly done from start to finish. And the first is him, I think the first is him stopping a robbery of a store by a little league team.
Yeah.
Again, like again, the
I love
level
the,
of just
I love the fact that like they're hitting the guy. Like there's two of them holding him down, the shop owner down, and one of them just beating him with a baseball bat. Yeah, it's
it's so
um
mean spirited.
yeah, yeah. But
There are so many
but their
things like
coach
this. It's just
and it's their
this is
coach
so
outs
Frank Miller too,
oh
right?
yeah,
Like
but and their coach is
this is
outside like with the getaway car.
yeah. It sounds like Chuck Palahniuk or something. Like
Mm,
you've turned the your little league team into your own personal goon squad.
yeah. No, but this is very, as you say, this is very, very Frank Miller. One thing you've just mentioned there that makes me think. I just want to just go to the uh, pace or the sort of the structure of this film. It does kind of feel episodic in the sense of like, oh, we've had issue one, which is up to a point. Then you have like issue two, and each issue has a kind of like a scene or a section that where RoboCop's going to do a thing, and this is sort of like so. I can almost see that now you've said it like that. We've said before about like leading up to him being destroyed is the end of like that's the end of issue whatever, and
Yeah.
then this is RoboCop being turned into the sort of like the liberal nightmare in this issue. But throughout it all is the overall story of leading up to the confrontation in the final issue. But I mean, I can't get away from it now. I can see it in my head like this. I could see how Frank Miller sort of said, "Oh no, I wrote this script as a comic," and I can be like, "Oh yeah, no, I see it now. Like this is issue by issue how this would play out." Um, which is
And I think that
which is
leads to an unconventional narrative structure,
mm,
right? Because like the issues with the wife and family are resolved relatively early.
yeah,
Um, it makes sense to reintroduce RoboCop, the way they do, but then, we've got that family stuff resolved early. It doesn't come back really. We've got, RoboCop defeated and, brought low. This is sort of like the Born Again arc from
mm-hmm,
Daredevil of like, there's a classic story structure of just having the main character hit their lowest point,
mm-hmm.
the villain wins basically, and then they claw themselves back up and are victorious at the end. And here, part of that recovery is going through the sort of like liberal nightmare chapter.
Yes, Yeah, which is what this is. I mean, it's so yeah, but it is hilarious. This whole sequence, let's say, with the thing, and again, I just want to call out Peter Weller for his performance
Yes.
throughout this and being able to change the tone. He does
I
a
think he is
phenomenal.
so much better in this than in the first one. Like in
Well,
the
he
first one,
gets
I
to
feel
do
like,
more in this, doesn't he?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the first one, I feel like he's fine. He's
Yeah.
good, but he doesn't have an awful lot to do. He doesn't have a big emotional range. He's basically struggling with that suit,
Hmm.
right? And with how to seem robotic, but still seem like there's a human inside that suit. And he does an amazing job of it. But that's
Mm.
his main job in number one. Here, he gets to emote. He gets to,
Yeah.
like this lecture that he gives to these kids is just, again, every line of dialogue is so wonderful. And then later the kids at the fire hydrant who is, he's speaking these horrible platitudes to. Um, it's just wonderful to me.
It's yeah, well, it's it is good. Comes from the sort of stuff he says. He sort of he's talking to the kids, um, and he is saying sort of like he's like you say platitudes or little sort of like memorism sort of things to say. I'm trying to think. I'm looking the quotes,
Like,
but the
bad words make for bad feelings.
that's
Like
it.
when they
That was
say,
the one I was
like,
thinking about.
fuck
Yeah,
you. And he's
yeah,
like, bad words make for bad feelings.
yeah.
It's like,
Um, but I also like that. Like he's clearly sort of his perception and his sort of processing speed because he's more in there now is slowed because as they've driven up, um, and Lois has sort of detected this crime. She shot the coach to get so they could go in, and as she's sort of like trying to take out this little league gang, like he's reading the rights to this corpse outside.
that is such a wonderful moment. I laughed out loud. And
Mm,
and what, even all these times watching it, that he's reading the Miranda rights and she says, Murphy, he's dead, and it's still not clicking to her. And then she's shouting as she's dealing with these little league,
yeah,
you know, p- criminals. And he says, Murphy, like, you're reading Miranda to a corpse,
yeah.
and he sort of like looks at what he's doing and it kind of registers. But I
He
laughed out
puts
loud
his
at that
fingers together
line.
because he puts his sort of fingers. He steeples his fingers and says, "I may have a problem."
Yes.
um, And she calls out because they're in the car together later, and he says, like, "Your hair looks lovely that way." And she's going like, "What is wrong with you?"
You're fucked
Um,
up.
yeah. And so this whole sequence is funny because again, like the police, the kids are just taking the mick. Because what's funny is this plays into a little bit in the first film. One of the newsreels you've seen, like the woman says, like, "Oh, you don't see him interacting with kids." Well, the first film, he does. He visits a school. And you see this thing where he's walking off and he sort of turns and all the kids go, like playing up to it a little bit. And then with the interviewer sort of says, what message do you have for kids? And he sort of says, stay in school. And this is obviously now sort of like, taking it all the other way. And the kids are sort of drawing a big penis on his back with the graffiti and sort of
I say,
spraying on his
kick
head.
me.
Kick me, I see
Yeah.
it.
And they've misspelled kick, which is so
Yeah.
perfect. Like they're just total
Well,
juvenile delinquents.
yeah.
Except they're in a little league team, which you wouldn't expect. But
Well, when they're on the street, when they go to the street and he talks to the kids on the fire hydrant.
yeah.
And again, I don't know if I've read this right, but you got this guy who sort of stood around watching the kids, who I'm taking as like a child predator, who's been watching the kids. And like
I
as
never thought of that.
well, because like, the way I've taken the joke is that he stood there like watching the kids, and then they all run off, and he follows them. Like the guy starts to walk, and he's watching them as they go around the corner as he's smoking, and then Murphy shoots around him, around the top of his head, and shoots his cigarette, and then tells him off for smoking in public.
That's one of my favorite bits
Yeah, and
of
I'm
this
like, oh no,
is
you're not getting that this guy's looking to kidnap and rape these kids. Like maybe that's just
I never got that. He sort of, it's well done. Like it's well edited. You
mm,
see him as they're getting out of the car, you see him light up a cigarette. And I
yeah, yeah.
think, to me, I just thought he was a guy walking, in the background, and he's kind of watching standing there,
Mm,
maybe he's watching the crime, but I mean, he's just a civilian smoking who's not bothered by this crime. It never occurred to me he was a child predator. If he is, that kind of takes away from some of the message of that sequence for me,
mm.
which is like, the real villain in this crime-ridden city is
Someone
smoking.
smoking. Yeah.
Like, he's nicer to the people beating a guy with a bat than he is to a smoker. And this does seem like, look, you and I are both, on the left politically, but this does seem like a legitimate complaint of liberal
Mm.
politics.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
the sort of like feel if every criminal in jail only had more love, none of them would have committed those violent crimes. That might be true in some cases. It's not true in all, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's also not clear that what we can do about it. Like love late in life, isn't necessarily going to cause somebody to change and reform. And that, he fires all around the head of somebody for doing something legal, smoking on the street. Like that sounds like a very PTA,
Mm.
you know, sort of thing, and misplaced priorities.
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
love that
No,
sequence.
it
Yeah.
is good. Again, this comes like the fact the guy's in the background though, and it is a well done sequence. And it comes together very very well. But this does highlight a thing to Robo, like he clearly has clocked on to the fact that like because you've seen his vision as well, like it's clicked in, and it's kind of like you saw it when it was being programmed, and Fax was talking to him, and she's like, he's resisting, and he's just like, he can't resist, he's a machine, and all this other stuff. Like, and he is fighting it. You've seen them all like popping up, and if you can pause it and you can pick a few out. I don't think anyone's ever maybe recorded them all, but
Yeah.
um,
But there's like, oh, you see the number 250?
yes,
Like,
I was gonna
and it's like
say,
no wonder he's having trouble processing.
yeah.
He's got these 250 feel good things added.
But I was curious because it's Fax that does it to him. So is she doing it legitimately to improve Robo, or is she doing this intentionally to make him shit so that she can then supersede it with her Robocop 2?
I think she's just doing this as a PR move, right?
Right.
That she,
Yeah.
um, she thinks she's, the smartest cookie, and that, uh, he doesn't. I think to the extent that it's designed to make RoboCop obsolete, I don't think it's designed to make him break down. I think it's designed to sort of use RoboCop 2 as the new enforcer. RoboCop, who's obsolete, can be on, kitty thinking duty and, public service announcement, kind of, he doesn't need to be the tough guy anymore. We got this
Mm.
new guy coming in. Um, so if he's a little less effective because of all this stuff that's going to win us good PR, then, so what? But I've never thought of it as intentionally screwing RoboCop up.
No.
Although, I mean,
It,
it's not
yeah.
that they would mind.
No, no. That's true. One thing I wanted to just sort of on this point about this thing is because I think, we sort of suggested that RoboCop has a sort of a satirical and intrinsic link to Judge Dredd and Mega City 1. Even if from a design perspective at one point one of the things that sort of that Dredd did and John Wagner and Rob Williams did more recently is that in the 90s they introduced the machismo droids, the mechanismo droids, basically sort of robo judges, and then over time they sort of have had a number of stories where they've either been sort of like a complete disaster or they've been sort of like utilized for different things, but they've generally been integrated into the justice system. And in recent years they've had it where the robo judges, because of their programming to be more humane, have become more admired and liked by the citizens of Mega City 1 than the human judges. And that became a bit of a sort of a point up until quite recently, where, they were like, there was a whole block that were just like, no, we just use robo judges because they're nicer. And there was other
Yeah.
things. So, even reading that, I was kind of like, I had that feeling of the Robocop 2 kind of sense of, as you said, sort of those ideas of the liberal sort of being able to program what you want things to do to be nice because that's easy.
But it
Um,
also kind of reminds me of like the corporate thing where you get a new CEO in and suddenly like they've got to put their stamp on everything.
mhm.
Here it's not a new CEO, but it's, a new person who's kind of effectively in charge of this program, who, like, well, let's take RoboCop in a different direction,
Yeah,
like, uh, yes, he's effective, but we've got a lot of parental complaints, why not address these things? Like,
Let's make him more family friendly. Well, wait till we get to three, and we'll see how that goes for you. Um, but yeah, I like the fact that he clocks. He realizes that this is an issue. It's preventing him from doing things, and his reaction is he goes back to the police station, walks straight up to the generator or like the power converter for the building, and gets himself zapped with a however many volts, and just clunk falls over. But again, like the police that are on strike drop the placards, or they sort of use the placards, pick him up and carry him into the station, and like and I love this that like although they're on sort of thing, they're still there, like they still see RoboCop as like sort of one of them, like they recognize him as Murphy, but know that he hasn't got a choice in doing the things that he's sort of having to do at times. Um, but this is the scene that I'm kind of the rallying scene. This scene where sort of he gets up and someone's like, what are you thinking, Murph? And he's like, what's bothering you? Kane. Kane's bothering me. And it sort of rallies the police to sort of all of them are going to go out and they're like, yeah, fuck it, this is it. Let's just go and take out Kane. This is the one thing in the film where I'm a bit like, this kind of doesn't work for me. Like it's cool when they're all sort of like, the cars are all sort of charging down the
I
street.
love that. Like, they're gonna kick somebody's ass.
Yeah.
I think of that line often. When I see a
Yeah.
bunch of cop cars coming down the street, I'm like, oh shit, someone's in trouble.
Yeah, yeah, someone's getting their ass kicked. Um, yeah, I thought that was good, but I'm not entirely sure why the strike stops for them to do this just because of what's happened to RoboCop. Like, it wasn't enough that like he was dismantled. Like now they've done this. Like, there's nothing there that sort of says, there's no justification given for me by like RoboCop saying everything that's wrong with this city is down to Kane, or like or we need to stop the drugs, or whatever. Like
Yeah,
it always feels a little bit too easy that they're all of a sudden like, yeah, we're gonna tool up and go after Kane.
I agree with that. I'm a little personal. I mean, I think a line of dialogue could help that. Like you're
Hmm.
suggesting, kind of like, he's the source of these problems. I need you to like RoboCop should make an appeal to them.
Yes.
They just kind of automatically fall in line twice already when he's needed them.
Hmm.
Now he sort of, implicitly needs them, and they're like, fuck this strike, man. Like, RoboCop needs us. All right, let's get back. And it is a little cliched. I'm actually more bothered by I mean, I think it works. I'm willing to overlook it, but I'm more bothered by RoboCop electrocuting himself and how an electrocution
Just
resets the
wipes his.
original
Yeah.
protocols.
Yeah.
And how does he know to do that? Like, I like that he's obviously accepting a high probability of death, which suggests he doesn't really care. He's in hell. But I like that aspect. But the whole like, yeah, this is going to be solved by just a big
Uh,
electrocution.
yeah.
That bothers me more than the cops. But you're right about the cops. I mean, and I think a little bit of dialogue there would help.
I agree. I think yeah, and it's not a bad scene. I still like it when they're all sort of like you say, the car sort of like zooming past, and then they get to Kane's warehouse, and they've all been there because he's now just trying a new sort of. He gives a great speech like Kane does whilst this is going on about like basically sort of like making Made in America mean something again, and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. Drugs for highs, drug for lows. Like you'll have a red one and a blue one and all this other stuff. I thought that's kind of cool. Um,
And not philosophically totally wrong, right? I mean,
no.
there is this big debate. We're all on drugs now, right? I mean, everybody's on drugs for mood regulation. And
Hmm.
I mean, I'm on caffeine as we speak, but I
Yeah.
mean, everybody seems to be on tons of prescription drugs. And, there certainly is an argument to be made for, if happiness is the goal, we could not the way we're doing it, but
Hmm.
there's nothing implicitly wrong with this idea. It's just that it's addictive and part of, you know, drugs that are not helping people.
Mm.
But if Nuke is just making people happy, and if you were willing to remove the addictive qualities, would it be so bad? I mean, I think it would be. 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 I think it would be we're not aware of any terrible side effects, right? It's not like everybody's teeth fall out on meth or something, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, people are, committing crimes to get drug money, but maybe the price of Nuke will fall if there's more of it. So I do like his speech, and I think he's a good villain.
Mm. Well, I also like the fact that one of the things that, again, going against type as he gives this call is he's almost like a chef. Like he tries this new blue nuke, and he sort of has this sort of reaction. His teeth clench, and he sort of like, and you almost expect him to get angry and to punch the chemist or something, like, do something, and he doesn't. He just leans in and gives him like, cut it more with 5 milligrams of this, and it'll take the edge off. It's like a chef trying something and saying sort of like, add some oregano. It's sort of like, um, it's yeah, it just makes me laugh again, where I'm just sort of like, he's actually weirdly reasonable about some things. Like, he's sort of like, he's there tasting and going like, okay, this is how this will make it. Um, you know, uh, this is how it makes it better, sort of thing. He's a professional in this respect. This is the one area where he's like, I'm a connoisseur.
Well, in a weird way, like he's sort of like the ultimate designer drug manufacturer.
Mm,
Like this is not just about profit for him. Like
no,
this is about heightening human experience, and he is, a consummate professional about these formulas. This has never happened in real life,
yeah,
but in a weird way, he's
yet.
like the closest to a good guy drug boss,
Mm,
uh, from these movies that feature drug
yes,
kingpin as their villain.
yeah. But
He's
yeah,
the
so
drug messiah.
he is, yeah, he's the druggy Jesus. Um, but you do,
Jesus had days like this.
yeah. I do. He has some great quotes in that to sort of the people around him. I love the fact they all look slightly confused and a little bit like when he's saying things as well. Like they're not entirely sure how to react to everything he says. Um, but the police then do sort of like take the place. There's a massive shootout, and one of the things I loved in the first one is RoboCop taking on the drug den in the warehouse and sort of using his sort of targeting and stuff, and it's sort of like, he's watching and like, da, 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 with the gun and sort of like, and it culminates in sort of like not kind of seeing someone but shooting someone under his arm and sort of going up. And you say about in this one, it takes it to like up a notch because there are several scenes where like he sort of he creates like a fluid motion, but he looks away whilst he's shooting in the other direction. And it looks badass. Like he doesn't look at where he's shooting, but like there's one point where he's got his arm outstretched and he's looking away from his gun whilst he's shooting, and he does it several times, and it looks ace. Like I think again, going to the choices that Peter Weller makes in this film about how RoboCop moves and how certain things happen, brilliant. Like all the applause to Peter Weller and whoever his sort of movement coordinator was on this, because it looks so good. It's ridiculous, like it's absolutely ridiculous. But it is so cool. So I love this shootout. Is this where he shoots? He saves the baby.
Yeah.
Is it in this
Yeah.
beat?
So
Yeah.
so as they're entering, like in another just kind of like all like the little league team and just like the violence of the original, you see
Mm.
like, oh, there's a baby here, right? We're just like, oh my God, this is so horrible. And lo and behold, one of the last thugs in the main drug den grabs the baby and is holding a baby as
Yeah.
again, just the level of just mean-spirited violence in this movie.
Yeah.
And he's holding the baby as a hostage, and he says, like, I'll kill the baby. And he says, yeah, no. And he says, like, let me go. No, I'll kill the baby. We can't have that. I love these. And this is the first time we see the ricochet targeting,
Yes.
shot, which is so brilliant and has become kind of a staple of RoboCop since then.
Yes. Yeah. And it is. It's just so well done. It is incredibly well done. This whole sort of scene. So, but yeah, it results in this kind of big. It escalates and there's a big shootout, and Lois gets her moment of sort of saving some cops that are sort of pinned down and this sort of thing. And then it sort of has the boy and the girlfriend sort of escape in one truck, and Kane escapes in another. and Robocop comes out the smoke and everything, and basically the truck just plows into him,
Yeah.
and we have a kind of this is where it feels kind of ludicrous, but it's fun. But
Where
I don't know.
RoboCop drives past him and engages in a yeah.
Well, firstly, he's
Um,
stuck to the front of the van, to the front of the truck, and then sort of wheels around, and he gets sort of like pulled off because he drives him into the side of a wall as he's going down an entry, and then yeah, I like that like he falls off and like a bike again ride over the top of
oh
RoboCop.
yeah. No, again, like the level of just like mean spiritedness of this movie, and he, grabs one of the bikes.
Yeah, I love that.
Uh, yeah,
And then gets on the bike himself. And this is where it feels weird because there's a moment he drives past. I don't know if it's the. I
yeah.
thought like, oh, maybe it's the suit is a problem because he's stood up on the bike. But then he sits down when it gets past. I was like, maybe this is just maybe it is a part of the suit. Like they can only maneuver it in a certain way, or it was unbalanced or something. I don't know, but it looks weird. And then, like you say, he plays sort of chicken with him.
I
With
think the game of chicken works, but it's weird that he chooses to do it. Um,
yes,
but I love how much damage RoboCop takes. Like RoboCop takes such a beating in this movie, especially compared to one. Like
oh, it
RoboCop's
shows him to be
always,
it shows him to be
yeah.
much more resilient and tougher in this film than the first one. Yeah, I agree with that. Um,
But
yeah,
I like how he flies through the window and
yeah,
and wins. Although I agree with you that like I think it's weird that he decides to play the game of chicken. Like you feel like if this were Murphy from one, he would sort of like reach out and grab the passenger's door or something as he passes. Um, it's just a little bit of a flair for the dramatic. But I like this whole sequence with the
mm,
kid, the baby, and the other thing that's worth mentioning is, one of our complaints about the first movie is that Lewis has very little to do,
mm,
and that she's not much of a character. She's got so much to do in this movie.
yeah,
Like, she's like really integrated as RoboCop's partner, and really, I think becomes, a much fuller character in this film.
yeah. I agree. I think when she's still, I wouldn't say she's rounded as a character. She
Right.
exists only as Officer Lois. Like you only know as a police officer and stuff. But I
You don't
agree.
know her
She
family or
no.
yeah.
What she does in the off hours or how she feels about the police strike or anything like that isn't really there. But there's definitely a bond between her and Murphy that it feels like they are friends and
And she's competent.
partners.
She does
Yeah.
stuff that's important for the plot.
Oh, well, she's definitely like this is what I'm saying. Like she at several occasions, like she's calling out Murphy on stuff, but she saves a bunch of cops that are sort of pinned down. Like
Yeah.
she's just as competent as anybody else. Like she's not the one to be saved at any point in this film.
Yeah, I
Um,
really like that about this.
yeah, so I agree with that. But yeah,
But they've got Kane,
they've got
and
Kane.
there's this wonderful sequence as the psychiatrist identifies Kane and then shuts off his life support.
Hmm.
And again, the mean-spiritedness of this, that this is a franchise that in the first film has, Alex Murphy murdered, that's very violent murder sequence. That's, the sadism is very upsetting. Then you have him sort of in the RoboCop body, sort of like, these very traumatic things happening to him. All of that has been one-upped lots of times already. And you sort of suggested that they want Murphy to die in the first one.
Hmm.
All of that is explicit in RoboCop 2,
Oh,
where
yeah.
here they have Kane and she explicitly just shuts off the life support. And there's this wonderful scene that she calls and says, "The patient's just expired. We only have 4 minutes to get his brain." And he's like, "I'm still alive,"
Yeah.
But of course, it makes sense, right? You want that
Yeah.
brain to be as fresh
As
as
fresh as
possible.
possible. Yeah.
Call them in before you shut it off. It's so dark,
Yeah.
so dark, so
Yeah.
terrifying.
And then yeah, she sort of slowly sort of turns it goes over and flicks it. But the other thing we said about um one of the things we said in the last one is when you see Murphy being put together as Robocop, you see it from his perspective, you see it through his eyes. And we were constantly like, what the hell are they looking at? What the hell
Mhm.
are they seeing? we didn't know what's behind them. We've always said like what's beneath the face. Well, in this one, they're kind of going to tell you because
Yeah.
you're going to get a
I thought
jar.
about our conversation too.
Yeah, you're going to get a brain with some eyes and a spine, sort of part, a partial spinal column floating in a jar, and you're going to see it. You get to see it from its perspective, and then you get to see it. And I was just like, oh crap! Like that's cool. Like that's
Yeah.
what Kane has been sort of like reduced to. So yeah,
And it is a little pulpy. Again, like everything's exaggerated here, right? Like they're
yes,
gonna show it to you. It's literally a brain with eyeballs in a vat.
yeah.
Like it has a very sort of like 1950s quality to it, but it's done really well. It
Mm,
looks cool. Like I just love this stuff. I mean, it's so gonzo. But it's like restrained in a way. Like I mean, it's all of a piece with the rest of the film. Um,
yeah,
and
it
I mean,
doesn't. It doesn't feel out of place. Like it doesn't feel. You say it's Gonzo, but it doesn't feel any less Gonzo or any weird than anything else.
right.
Um,
I mean, it's just showing us what we didn't see in one, right?
exactly. So I'm kind of comfortable with that. I like it. I think it's a good choice to sort of show that. Um, Something that I want to just highlight that we haven't, because we can get to a key point in a minute, but we haven't addressed as part of the OCP storyline is that not only is OCP now fully running the police, which they are, and obviously causing this problem with the pensions and all this other stuff. It has resulted in the city of Detroit being indebted to OCP to a tune of 37 million, which in today's money doesn't sound that much.
I
But
had the same thought early on when they're
yeah,
talking about the Robocop 2 program, and they're like, this is, I forget what the number is, but it's like we've spent like $92 million
yeah,
on
that
this
was
or
it.
something. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
All right.
Google and other companies have thrown like 4 billion on
Yeah.
AI and they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like it is a mess. People are just throwing billions at AI. I do think that's two orders of magnitude greater than this number. Like,
Yeah. But I do kind of like the fact that like the mayor is like they've been sold down the river a little bit by the councilman, but the mayor um
is a character
Kuzak,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's a full he's good.
And he's a cool character. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's interacting with OCP, he's calling them out as like corporate vampires and all this other stuff. But he is degraded enough to the end to doing a telethon to raise money for the city. And we're going to get to how important that is in a minute. But like, he is a interesting character. That the mayor of Detroit um, is this
I
sort of
love his
like,
character.
yeah,
And I love the telethon. Like the telethon starts with a shot of a guy playing violin with his feet
oops, yeah,
and contorted into a bizarre yoga position or something. And again, just like the opening shot of this movie, it just throws you into these
hmm
sequences, right? Where you're just like, what? Like what am I? This movie is always sort of making you say, what am I like? I'm looking at a brain in a jar. Like you're
mm,
always amazed at what you're looking at next.
mm,
And I think that's so much of what I enjoy about, a lot of movies and comics, where it's just like, what the hell? But then it ultimately connects and it works, and
yeah.
yeah.
So when we'll come back to that bit, but like, yeah, so just to keep that in mind that the city is obviously indebted quite a lot to ACP, so he's tracking down this 37 million. So you got, I mean, this film is made up of a number of subplots, which kind of again goes back to this theory that this was written in the style of a comic. This was written to be a comic at some point. Like I can just feel it now that I look, now I
Well,
see
and
it put
don't
together.
forget they ultimately
Yeah,
made
they did.
Avatar did an
Yeah,
adaptation
yeah.
of the Miller scripts.
Um, Anyway, so yeah, so they have Kane. He's now killed. He's in a jar, and um, we now have basically sort of like um, the boy and the girlfriend have gone on the run and taken all the money as well, and so the boy is now setting himself up as in place of
The de
Kane.
facto leader, yeah.
He's going to be the new kingpin, and he's the one that calls into the telethon to say, basically, I'm willing to pay the 37 million to OCP or to the city to pay OCP, and they sort of
I
set up this meeting.
I love the sequence with Hob, the boy, and the girlfriend, in the truck as she's not ready to let go of Kane. And he's just
Yeah,
like, fuck Kane.
yeah,
And he's so, again, the means, like, he's so mean.
yeah,
And he uses, Nuke to control her. And, I mean, just the viciousness of this movie from start to finish
yeah,
is so staggering.
yeah. Like, yeah, he is, isn't he? He's a vile little shit. Which kind of, which is, we'll get to like what happens to him quite shortly. But basically, he sets himself up as a crime boss in a nice suit and in this warehouse, and the mayor goes to meet them. Counter to this, they obviously know that this is something's happening here, and so Kane has been built as well. You haven't seen it yet, but you know that Kane has been inserted into the machinery, into the skeleton, the endoskeleton or exoskeleton, sorry. And they are using, much like the boy uses Nuke to control the girlfriend, the psychiatrist is now using Nuke to control Kane because he's obviously addicted to it. Um,
which is now in big tubes. And one very minor quibble that I have is like, where does the psychiatrist get this Nuke from? And they have Nuke in this big tube, and then the CEO uses Nuke in a big tube in his demonstration later in the
I
movie,
think
and I'm
well
like,
that's
where
there
that
that
might suggesting your point that they were behind Nuke to begin with.
I've always thought there was involved. Now they could have gotten it from the raid, but that's the police, not OCP. So
Mhm.
I've always this goes to my thing. I think they've always been involved in some capacity. But she's got them in these tubes and she's able to control Kane. So they send Kane. Then let's be clear, they tried to send him on a covert mission, is what they decide to do. He's an assassin at this point, right? This 10-foot tall, huge armor plated thing is an assassin. But basically, it's being sent to. Who is it being sent off to kill? Like, is it the
The
mayor?
mayor and
The
Hobb,
council?
and
Yeah,
right, they're aware of this
this
attempt to
meeting
fund the
going.
city. Yeah, and
So,
I mean, this is the most cynical, like, you know, corporate
yeah,
endorsement of murder that we've had in the entire franchise so far, right? I mean,
yes,
it's sort of there in one that,
yeah.
obviously, that guy is working with the bad guys.
Hmm.
Here, that's not clear. There's no, I mean, there's a cop, there's police corruption,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Despite the cops being stand-up guys otherwise. Um, there's one bad egg
yeah.
in the department, and I do love him, and we sort of briefly bypassed his murder sequence at the hand of Kane,
Mm,
which is again another gruesome I mean, way before body horror, became a big thing in horror movies. The sheer amount of just body horror in this
yeah,
movie is shocking. But yeah, I think this is like a clear line where OZP is totally willing to send Robocop to murder the mayor
yeah,
and whoever is at this meeting.
yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. So he does. He's not exactly subtle. It's got like massive machine guns. It breaks in, starts killing everybody, and everyone sort of scappers. Um, Comes across the girlfriend, and in the TV comes out, and you get to see the sort of the
I love the
computerized
sequence so
Kane
much.
face. And she tries to sort of be like, oh baby, I could get used to this kind of thing. And
And
then,
the scene drags on. Like the
mhm,
scene lingers on this romantic reconnection between Kane and the girl, right? This soft-hearted, kind
yeah,
of like oddly touching moment as she's scared. But there's this wonderful shot of her, running her finger along, his accessory claw
hmm,
that he uses to grab the remote later. And saying she could get used to this. With this sort of like, we've seen this lots of times where somebody's consciousness gets transferred into a machine, and how do they deal with romance or whatever. And it's sort of like oddly touching, and you don't know
yeah,
how much she really loves him or not. And then in one of the most brilliantly shot sequences, he just gets mad and reaches his arm out and snaps her neck
yeah,
and drops her body like limp clothes to the floor, all of
mm,
which is done phenomenally brilliantly. The special effects are staggering to me.
Oh yeah, no, brilliant. I mean, again, this is all stop motion. Like Kane is done through stop motion, and it looks fantastic. I mean, little details. I mean, he steps off the truck, and it's almost like the raptors from like Jurassic Park. He's got these two like claw toes that like tap on the floor as he walks and stuff. Like, it's it's brilliantly done. The special effect. I love the design of Kane as well. Like that arm you said, that extension, like it curls round, like it's not tucked
Yeah.
in. It's sort of it's all sort of designed to be sort of it's encased and stuff. It's excellent. So yeah, he kills her, kills a bunch of other people, gangsters and cops and all kinds of things.
Mowing people down. I
Yeah,
mean, let's be clear.
the
The
councilman's
mayor's
killed.
staff is like,
Yeah,
the mayor
count
escapes through like a sewage
a
chute.
drain.
Yeah.
But he also then finds the boy is hidden in the back of one of the trucks, and he just lays into it with a machine gun, like the bullets rip through it. And then I'm unsure how, but RoboCop figures out that there's this thing going on, and he turns up, and
Well, there's probably been reports of Gatling gun fire.
True.
In this covert murder mission.
Yeah. But he turns up to sort of and assesses the scene, sees all the people, sees the girlfriend, and then you see the boy in this pile of money and gold in the back
In
of the
his
truck
suit.
in his suit, and
Riddled
RoboCop
with
sort of
machine gun fire.
yeah, and RoboCop sort of looks down at him, and he obviously connects him with his own son, and then the boy sort of says, you know, don't leave me,
Yeah.
and
This gets me.
And Robo's like, holds his hand and sort of like, I'm here or something like, I won't leave you, that sort of thing. And then the kid dies. And you are kind of like, this kid was like, had a machine gun. He's killed multiple people. He's sold drugs to like people. He's endorsed like babies being kept in sort of thing. But his death is still kind of like, it's kind of, you're like, oh shit, like this is, they're gonna do this. They're gonna kill the kid. Fair enough.
Again, the level of just sheer meanness of this
Yeah.
film. But I do love this. Like in a weird way, like this kid is granted an interiority, right? A
Mm,
kind of, space as a human being that, although this movie is so vicious, in a way it's even more vicious to
mm.
have this kid who's been so terrible. I love the shot of him in the back of this car, on a pile, and he's sort of adopted some of Kane's theatrics as he meets with the mayor. Says, "Well, round it up to an even 50 million."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and he's in the suit, like he's kind of like adopting his superhero, kind of super villain kind of persona and an imitation of Kane. And the
Mm.
mayor's shocked that it's a boy and says, "Let's get out of here." I mean, all of that stuff works great, but he's granted a meaningful death, which in a way is even more vicious of the movie. But I love that he says, "I'm dying." He knows he's
Hmm.
dying. He's obviously in pain and knows he's on the way out. And he says to RoboCop, like, you know, uh, it sucks,
Yeah.
and RoboCop says, yes. Um, and again, like you mentioned about the first one, that this is basically an atheistic universe. There's
Mm.
no indication of life after death. Um, it's just, you know, I did my thing. I lived my life. I'm dying really young. Uh, yeah, this sucks. And I just want somebody to be there with me and
Mm.
hold my hand as I die. It's oddly touching.
It is. No, it is. It's weird that I'm feeling this for this kid who I
Yeah.
know has been this awful villain. It works. It's kind of cool. But this is the thing that I think this is the moment that like after everything, like Kane, I'm not sure. You have to remind me how RoboCop knows that Kane has been put into RoboCop 2. I'm not sure if it's a gap I've sort of missed, but because it then moves to this presentation where you've got the old man and Fax, everyone else, and the mayor turns up and they're doing this presentation about Delta City and they're introducing RoboCop 2.
And again, a great model. Like, this
Mm,
presentation is wonderful. You see the CEO's charm and charisma from the first movie. This is the same Delta City idea, except, we see it rise up through the floor. And then, RoboCop 2 rises up through the floor.
yeah.
It's a great presentation. Um, and, the CEO has Nuke, and
Mm,
it's talking about the scourge of drugs and the outgoing administration. You know? Every line of dialogue is just so wonderful. Every
Oh,
every
it
shot is
feels,
so wonderful.
yeah. I mean, it feels legit. I mean, the CEO, the old man, has a great. This is has one of my favorite moments in this film coming up. But yeah, like he attacks them, and sort of like they say, and Fax is like, he can't do anything because he's everything's turned off. He's got the remote, and then and then Kane just grabs the remote and crushes it. Um,
I've always loved I think it's so clever, this sort of like, well, there's a failsafe. We have this remote, and the remote, he's still able to move around,
mm.
but the remote isn't working to deactivate him. But the remote has also disarmed him. And Kane just uses the robotic claw to just grab the remote and
Crush it.
hit the arm button
Yeah,
and then destroy it.
yeah,
And it's like, oh, that failsafe didn't work very well. We
yeah.
forgot he's a vicious son of a bitch who could just grab things.
And into this sort of presentation, there walks RoboCop with a massive gun, and he's just like, Kane. Um,
Step outside.
yeah, yeah, calls him out, and then
Yeah.
and uses this massive gun to sort of shoot at him, and basically it turns into a gunfight. Like it turns into this massive fight.
Well,
But sorry,
he,
before you get to this bit, one of my favorites is between Murphy and Kane. This fight's going on, and then at one point the CEO just says, "Behave yourselves."
it's a
As if,
spectacular moment, and
yeah.
it's become iconic. But even before then, all of this dialogue is so good that first of all, I love the idea of like a fiasco and how
Mm,
um entertaining a fiasco is. So this starts as this like really great speech with the rising city model and RoboCop 2 on speed. And then, as he's talking about Nuke and holding up the big vial, which somehow they're using now, um, Kane starts reaching for it. And this is where it starts to go off the rails, right? This
mm,
great presentation that's so well done. And the audience starts laughing and saying, somebody says, like, he wants the nuke, right?
yeah.
Like, your new cyborg wants the drugs that you're saying are so bad. And then RoboCop shows up and, calls him out. The mayor shouts, he's a killer. I've seen him.
Mm,
It's like bedlam has erupted. He grabs the remote, you know, and then Gatling gun fire is
yeah.
going off, and this like everything is completely off the rails so quickly. And then you get the CEO saying, "Behave yourselves,"
Yeah.
sort of asserting his
And no one's
masculine
listening.
authority.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brilliant. I think it is. It's really well done, and this is a cool scene. And then it escalates into the full fight.
But even the machine gun fire in the theater, cops arrive and start firing back, and RoboCop 2 is just mowing them down with Gatling gun fire, and you see, all these fleeing civilians just being mowed down. Like already, the body count is so
Yeah.
much higher than anything we've seen in almost any movie up to this point, but certainly RoboCop 1.
Oh yeah, no, and I love the fact it is so excessively violent. And this whole scene is just sort of like, it feels like that thing of like neither of them really care about like collateral damage at this point. Like there is just gonna be a fight and people are gonna get fucked up. Um, but yeah,
And
but
this is
go on.
Yeah, this is one of the best climactic fights of any action movie in history. We talked about how like I feel that RoboCop 1 is sort of lacking in that regard.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um and to this day, sort of like superhero movies and action movies, usually I tune out during the climactic fight. This one is a knockdown, drag out
Yeah.
fight between two cyborgs that is brutal, that is, practical. It makes sense. It uses the landscape of the building. Like, there's tons of casualties. Like, this is a
Mm.
mass casualty event. Before Transformers, before the first Authority movie, before Man of Steel, we're getting like a mass casualty event
Oh yeah.
with your new
Well,
technology slash superpowers, whatever.
because I want to get to that point actually, because we'll get to about the casualties and stuff at the end. But I love the fact that, like I say, part of this film is like I say, is how it uses the environment. Like like you say, you said like Kane, step outside, and they do this stuff, but it sort of escalates. Like it goes into the elevator shaft, where, and I love this bit where like he
Oh.
tricks Kane into sort of going in it and then shoots the cable and like Murphy goes up and Kane just falls down, and then all of a sudden you hear this like clunk 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 clunk, and Murphy looks down, and it's just sort of like freewheeling its way back up the elevator shaft, like it's
With
using
its giant
yeah,
arms, you know.
and but it's using all of its appendages in this sort of like rotating effect of like dun 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 as it runs up, and they burst through the roof, and stuff like it's yeah, so cool.
And that shot is horrific of like you looking down and this fucking horrifying cyborg is flying up at you through the elevator shaft.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they fight on the roof, and then they sort of fly off, and then they have like
Well,
as they're sort of
Murphy is dangling off the roof. I mean, this
yeah,
is like, again, like the stakes here, the sense of drama that this
mm,
brings, as Murphy is hanging off the roof, sort of, end of Die Hard style,
yeah,
and, holding on to RoboCop 2, who's resisting, and he says, like, you're coming with me. And it's clear, again, he's tried to electrocute himself. It's clear he is absolutely accepting that he is willing to die to stop
oh
RoboCop 2.
yeah,
He doesn't have to say it. We don't need like a painful moment between Superman and
I'm
Lois
willing
where
to
he says like
sacrifice myself, or like
in the
yeah,
middle of a fight for some reason. I mean, but it's implicitly there. You feel it, and
yeah,
he pulls him off the roof, and you even get like the Looney Tunes sound effect as they're falling, like and they crash through the floor. They clash. It's so
oh
well done. I mean,
into the lower car park.
the substructure, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's so cool. But I love the fact that how RoboCop does it. Like he pushing off the roof. Like you literally see him like pushing his legs away from the building to use the leverage to try and pull Kane off the roof in the RoboCop 2 off the roof. It looks great. It's well thought out, and it does again. But he comes out and then Kane bursts out of the thing, and the fight continues. At one point, he hits him with a truck, like the police truck, and like
Well,
this.
Lewis even hits him with gets a hit in,
Yeah.
against this. I mean, kudos to her. Like,
Mm. Oh, she's part of the
uh,
fight. Yeah, like she's not
it's
messing.
amazing.
And then obviously
RoboCop ignites a gas leak. I mean, like this is just a brutal knockdown, drag out fight that's intelligently done. That uses physics, it uses the environment, all the stuff that I want in a real
Mm.
fight. Where it's like I know where they are, I know how this
That's
works.
the point. That's the thing I love, and I've always said this before. I've said this in other places. Like the geography of a fight is really important because it goes up, it goes down, it goes all over the place. But I can follow it. Like it's not all of a sudden they're like, oh, in the lobby, oh, now they're here, now they're that. Like you are following this fight up and down this building and through the car park and back out again. Like it makes total sense. At no point do I lose track of where either of them are. So
Yes.
it never feels like they just pop out of nowhere to continue the fight, which is important, and I think in it works really well.
And they're constantly using that environment.
Mm.
It matters to that fight.
Well, I like the fact it's contained as well. Although this is a major, like you say, sort of like high casualty event. It never sort of sprawls out to be like, now we're down the freeway and we're doing this, we're doing that. Like it's just contained in this time and space. Which again that feels important and stuff because it is this sort of fight. But then we get to the sort of again like Murphy gets on top of him and he's sort of shooting at him and he's sort of like they've got the gun snapping at him and all this other stuff and the things all snapping at him and he reaches in and he gets the sort of like the top off Kane. And this is where I've got a question. Oh, go on for it.
What? So, I mean, and I feel the real horror of as they fall through that car park. It's like I know spaces like this. Like you've been in spaces like this. You feel for these people running away, and then they get back to the surface, and again, just the sheer number of casualties as Kane is just gunning people down, and cops are firing back, and it's like Grand Theft Auto, just like over the top mass casualty event. And then finally, what is it that he uses to? Oh, he uses Nuke, right? I mean, like the big solution is that Lewis distracts him with Nuke while RoboCop goes
Jumps on top of
around
him.
and jumps on his back and pulls out this brain.
Yeah. And
Like,
again,
oh my god, this is so insane and
a great
brilliantly
solution.
choreographed.
This is it.
Yeah.
Great solution. Give him the thing he wants. He's an addict. This is the way to distract him. And then yeah, Robocop jumps off the top of one of the trucks onto the top of Kane and as Robocop 2, shoots into the thing and finds where the brain stem is and pulls it out and rolls onto the road and smashes it into the road. Now this
The
is when I have a
horror of seeing a brain smashed
yeah
on the ground, and again, like right to the end, like this is so unbelievably violent and
yeah
horrible, and but wonderful in its
mm.
thoughtfulness.
um but the two things I want to sort of point out in this is that is like how sort of like it's this is that gonzo over the topness, like because in my head I'm going like, well, surely pulling the brain out should of the machine should be enough.
Yeah,
um
this is true.
and then the thing is, it's this TV screen that you've got. Kane is his this computerized image of his face, which again for 1990, it's kind of pixelated or kind of like blocky, but it's fine. It does its
It's
job.
Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, yeah, but it doesn't need to be sort of like it looks enough like Ted Noonan, Tom Noonan to be recognizable as Kane. So I'm comfortable with that. Um, but it's the fact that it's watching him do this that I'm like, what's connecting this screen and its reaction to
Yeah.
Murphy with his brain? I don't. That's where I'm sort of like, oh, this feels disconnected now. Like it should have just been pulling the
It's almost
brain
like
out.
there's a Wi-Fi signal between
Yes.
that brain container and RoboCop 2, which clearly there's no need to have because it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to let this go for poetic license because
Mm.
obviously it lets you in a movie that is all about being mean and the
Yeah.
violence and the horror of being a cyborg and all this stuff. It lets RoboCop 2 stare at his own brain
Yeah.
being smashed and on the ground and pounded with a fist,
Yeah.
uh, which is just horrifying.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I have the same thought, and it doesn't really make sense.
No, but you're right. It works. It's kind of effective for the film for what it is. One of the things I sort of noticed again, sort of like, and I've always thought about this, or I haven't always thought, but I've noticed it of probably the last couple times I've watched this is, oh, because I want to talk about that computerized face of Kane because it's cool. I'm like, oh wow, for 1990, it moves, it emotes, it does some pretty cool stuff. Again, well done to the special effects guys. It works well. Um, I also like the fact that it's keeping the police colors. Like the face is kind of lit blue and red, as if it's sort of illuminated by the blues and twos. So I was like, again, I'm like, that's a cool design. Like they've thought about this stuff. Like it's not just a single color, like a block color. They've given it shading, but also this kind of like this coloring of red and blue looks. They've kept with the police colors. So yeah, I just think there's so many little thoughts that have gone into this that when it finally ends and that face sort of disappears and Robocop goes and dies, um, it all kind of feels, I don't know, like satisfying. Like the whole thing has been like, oh, there's been a cool fight. I've liked the design of both of these. Like everything in this point has worked in a really sort of satisfying way. So yeah, again, just that design text and the special effects guys really need to be sort of like applauded for some of the shit in this film. Very very good.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point about the colors.
Mm,
Yeah, I just think this is, from start to finish, from that CEO display to,
yeah.
the defeat of RoboCop 2 and it's a long segment. Like I
Mm,
forgot how long that fight is. It really goes on. It has multiple stages and multiple environments, but every single one is fascinating,
mm, mm.
and works. And I'm just amazed. And at this point, so at this point, everybody's dead, right? Gainesville Crew is dead.
Yeah.
The mayor survived, but the CEO and Johnson and the psychiatrist have all survived. RoboCop survived. Lewis has survived. But clearly, tons of people have been murdered
Yeah.
at OCP's tower, right? And this horrifying fight.
Well, I love the fact that this is where the film. So for RoboCop, really, the film has ended. Like this is the sort of like if this had been the first film, it'd have gone like boom, dun 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 dun, and that'd have been the end. Sort of like the punch ending. I like the fact that it goes to the old man Johnson, Holzgang, and then they're all having this conversation, but the lawyer Holzgang's going like, Yeah, no, this is a disaster. Like we were expecting, kind of like these kind of lawsuits. And at one point, someone says like so many had died, and it's sort of like, oh well, that's fine, they're dead. And then yes, but they've had families. They
This is
always have families.
I always think of that line, right?
Yeah,
Just the pure. I mean, it's an exaggeration, right? But I mean, the pure evil of this
yeah,
corporation, as he says, well, we won't have any trouble from the dead ones,
yeah.
and he says,
They have
well, they'll
families.
have
They always,
families.
yeah,
They always do.
yeah,
It's kind of like it's so annoying that we have
yeah.
to deal with,
The
losses from the
frustration.
people that we've killed.
Yeah. But then they start sort of strategizing very quickly, don't they? Of how do we? Because again, like lawsuits and prison time is going to be inevitable. And then the CEO sort of like like for me, and he's like, no, no, no. As always, we'll do
Well,
everything we can to
Johnson
protect.
says, we should use a fall guy.
Mm.
And the CEO instantly says, "Oh, good, that usually works."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
again,
They've done
the
this
sheer
before.
meanness of this.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
they're
the fact that
totally used to this.
yeah, they've done this before. Like how many people have been sort of like done time when they shouldn't for
Right.
OCP. And
All the
obviously
minions always get long jail sentences. The CEOs get golden parachutes and a small fine at
yeah,
worst.
and then obviously it sort of sets up that Fax is going to be the fall guy. She, they say like, well, she's the one that chose the brain. You know, how much is there anything basically? Is there anything written down that says you were involved? No. She's someone went off on their own and chose it without whatever.
Well, and,
Um,
and the lawyer has a great line where they say, is there evidence of this? And the lawyer says, whether it exists or not, I'll find it.
yeah,
I mean, again, it's just the stereotype of corporate, conspiracy theories.
yeah, and it's excellent. I love that, and so um, that's the conversation. But he still goes off with her. He's still like and he says to Johnson that thing we just talked about. Get right on it.
Well, we haven't mentioned that, earlier Johnson found that the psychiatrist and the CAO have been
Having an
having an
affair.
affair,
Yeah.
and that she's, comes to the hot tub as he's telling her, she comes up from behind him as he's
Mm,
telling her what she's doing with RoboCop 2 is terrible. Um, but then at the end, I love that she comes up before he's given his answer.
yeah.
And then he just says to Johnson, that thing we were talking about. As he's standing, he's saying, like,
Yes.
hi, honey, right? That thing we were talking about, move on it right away. And walks off as if, again,
Yeah.
the cruelty, the sheer just like, I
Well,
mean, level of screwing people over right in front of them that these people are used to.
well,
It's shocking.
but to top it off as well is it then follows them out of the building and into the limousine, and the press are asking questions. But more than that, like he steps over like two injured people in the way.
He literally
Just
is stepping over the bodies.
yeah. Like you couldn't be more on the nose. Like he's literally
Yeah.
stepping over the bodies to get away, and that's when you get the final shot as the limousine pulls away. Like Lois says, they're going to get away with it again. And Robo sort of like, well, yeah, this time, but be patient, Lois. We're only human. Um, and so
Smash cut to,
yeah,
the great,
RoboCop 2, and yeah,
the and with the great titles with the
hmm
80s bars, along the,
yes,
blues type. I love
um,
every bit of this.
yeah, no, it's cool and it is good. I mean, so yeah, but again, this comes back to this thing we've said about the superhero narrative. Like, it's going to kick you in the teeth. That like, yes, Batman has sort of defeated the Joker, but the police corruption and the political corruption has not been dealt with. That's still
Right.
the city is still a mess. Um, you know, we've just dealt with the sort of the colourful villain of the week, not with the sort of like systemic issues that are causing Detroit to fall apart, or Gotham for that matter. Yeah, so I do like that. Um,
And the sheer cruelty and the practice cruelty that's displayed in this ending of this, of OCP covering it up, being well versed in doing so, um, just shifting to the fall guy, throwing another person under the bus. They're just
mhm.
as cruel as Kane. They're just in nice offices and dressed nice and, doing legal murder instead of selling drugs. And boy, I mean, this has the most action-packed, successful climax for me, followed by the ultimate Pyrrhic victory of just
Yeah.
like, yeah, the system continues. You have not fundamentally changed anything. Stay tuned for RoboCop 3.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I like it in that sense of like this is that pulpy hit, kind of a story. This is the same as like Dick Tracy or sort of Batman or sort of any of those sort of like the Shadow, any of those heroes that sort of like the villain of the week has been defeated. Yeah, like wait for the next adventure. Like this because they are always taking on crime in the broken city. You're like, yeah, but they're not fixing the issues. Like they're kind of part of the problem.
The
It's sort
city's
of
still broken,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So yes, anyway, so that's RoboCop 2. So I've got to say, like as a piece, like I don't like it as much as I've said. I think I've made it clear. Like I think I prefer RoboCop. However, it is one of those where I'm like, it's kind of like it's kind of like saying, well, I don't know, I like cheesecake more than you know birthday cake. It's like yeah, they're both cake and they're both great, but one's slightly better. Like this is a combo where like they've kind of gone to more excess, and I think a lot of it works, and I think it's kind of it's fun. I think, as I said, I applaud all the special effects in this film. I think it works really well. I think the story's fun. I think some of the excess is a little too much, and it feels too cartoony, or like there's an inauthenticity to it that takes me out of the film. But I would say this is still a success. This is still a win, and I do think some of the, to be fair, like if I look at like IMDb for example, like RoboCop is a 7.6, and I would agree with that. This is a 5.8, and I'm like that is completely that's unfair. Like this is not a 5.8 film. This is um it's one of these situations as I've sort of read some of the reviews and stuff the other day. I was reading through these, and not just on IMDb. I was reading my letterbox. The amount of people that kind of, as we've gone through it, I think have misunderstood this film, and they've gone like, "Oh, this just gave in to the sort of the studio system, or this became the sort of the superhero film that the other one was against, or like this is the opposite of what RoboCop 1 is." And I'm going like, "No, no, no! I think you've kind of missed the point of what this film is." So, and I can see why it's not. It's so mean. It's so sort of nihilistic in so many ways. I can see why people aren't, up on it. But like, no, I think this is a really solid and substantial sequel to what I consider to be a classic film. So, yeah.
I think this is, for my taste, this is better than RoboCop 1.
Mm,
And yes, I know it's over the top. I know it's extreme, in places. Um, but it is tonally consistent. And I think it's a lot closer to RoboCop 1 than we imagine. That, I know it feels different. It feels less different to me. But, don't forget RoboCop 1 has the TV sequences. It has a lot of over-the-top elements. It has that, the sadism of the gang as they're killing Murphy, is really of a piece. Has a slightly different, more serious, sadistic tone that's
hmm
more disturbing in some ways than, the, mean-spiritedness of this movie. But there's a cruelty to the first one too.
mm,
And it could be argued that in a second adventure, having done the origin story, the traditional thing is to elevate the stakes, right? Um, this is, this does it as well as any movie I can imagine in a franchise, of doing exactly that.
mm.
Um, I mean, for me, I think it is such a sin that this movie gets lumped in with the later RoboCop movies and TV shows and
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
And I think that as a result, people think, oh, everything the first one is a classic. That's Verhoeven. Everything else is just, goes off in a weird direction. No, this keeps the satire of the original. It, might feel a little more cartoonishly exaggerated here and there, but it keeps the mean-spiritedness, it keeps the, existential dread and horror of the situation. All of that stuff is here. I think this is I like this better. I think every line of dialogue is, virtually every line of dialogue is brilliant. I have a few quibbles that I've expressed as we've gone along, but I feel like every shot, every scene works, sticks in my mind. The special effects are great, the acting is great. I mean, there are quibbles here and there, but so much happens in this movie and all of it works.
Mm.
Um, I'm just blown away by this movie every time. And I think, it is, for me, it is a masterpiece. And I think in some ways it kind of like out Verhoeven's Verhoeven. Like all the things that we imagine of Verhoeven is like excessive violence, over the top, a sense of satire, but kind of like not pulling its punches, kind of like a little on the nose satire. I mean, this works better than Starship Troopers for that.
Well, I
Like
was going to say,
Starship
I was going to
Troopers,
say,
the
this
whole
is,
first half has a lot of dialogue that just feels
yeah.
cliched and is setting up just like the 90210 thing. Um,
I think this
Whereas
is
this is just a
closer.
roller coaster.
I was going to say, this is closer to Starship Troopers than 87 Robocop.
Hmm.
I mean, this is probably more aligned to like later Verhoeven, like Starship Troopers, the Showgirls, that kind of thing, where it's sort of like, the kitsch and everything was coming in. So I don't know. Yeah, I agree. In that sort of it fits the mold definitely, and I think let's be clear, Robocop does go off the rails. We'll talk about that,
Yes.
but I do know I agree. I think this works in tandem with that first film, and I think
Yeah.
it delivers a decent message, especially around the heroics of it, the super heroics of these characters. And I think the point we've got to keep making is like, you know, Robocop's not a superhero. Like it is he's a tragedy and an absolute body horror, kind of like tale. So it's yeah, this isn't kind of, I don't know. It just, yeah, it's funny that when you get these things into comics, and there was Marvel had a sort of a RoboCop series. Dark Horse did some
I
RoboCop stuff,
read
and that.
it when it was being published.
Okay, yeah,
The Marvel,
and
even
that
back then.
falls very much into the sort of superhero-y kind of like, oh, he's taking on this and he's taking on that, and and I think it feels like that slope towards the cartoon that we're going to talk about soon enough. That, yeah, I feel
Well,
that.
and the other thing is that this is a hard R. I mean, this is
Mm-mm.
this is a really hard R, right? I mean, this is
Yes.
one of the most violent movies ever made. Um, and stylishly violent,
Mm.
and not in a sort of like polished 300 kind of way, but just, um, boy, a sense of panache to
Yeah.
everything, which I really just appreciate and love. But I mean, this is a hard R. It's satirical. RoboCop is not just a tragic figure. Like, yeah, I know Batman's parents died, but like his very existence is, a horror.
Oh, minute to
And
minute,
this
like
movie
his
doesn't
life
forget
must,
it.
yeah, minute to minute, his life must be awful.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
But you also
And,
see where some of the problems are because in these two Pyrrhic victory endings,
mhm,
especially in RoboCop 2, it's clear, like at some point, we've got to resolve this OCP stuff, right? Like RoboCop and this police at the end of RoboCop 2, um, they're resigned to the system.
yes,
They don't know how to change the system. OCP is as clearly evil at the end of RoboCop 2 as
if not
ever.
more so.
Yes, exactly. So it's clear you watching this, you'd think, oh, okay, well, we've got to do the Delta City, we've got to do OCP as the victim. Is RoboCop gonna serve them endlessly? Um, you know, these are the questions you've got to resolve in a sequel,
Hmm.
and they do address those, but in the most unsatisfying manner possible.
Let's see. Yeah, let's hear how we get to that in the next episode. Yes, when we talk about RoboCop 1993's RoboCop 3, and I will tell you how I felt about that when it first came out. Because I was different as a child.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was you. It's like this was I'm a little older than you. So RoboCop 2 was like my RoboCop,
Mm.
you know. Like I said, I was like 13 or something. And I had seen RoboCop but like on VHS. and RoboCop 2 was the one I saw in theaters, and my parents were horrified. I still remember walking out of the theaters and my parents being like, I loved it from start to finish, and my parents being shell shocked and traumatized. You know, and my dad still talking about, the high heel poking out somebody's eye and how he could never got over that.
Yeah, I was 12 when RoboCop 3 came out. And so yeah, I remember it being a big deal. I remember it being sort of talked about. I mean, this was the year I started secondary school, so it's sort of like I remember it being kind of a big deal when it sort of came about and stuff. So yeah, it'd be interesting to sort of see what we get to when we get to it next week. We have a lot
Looking
to talk
forward
about.
to it.
I think
I doubt I will feel it's revisiting an under valued masterpiece like I do with RoboCop 2.
yes, as threequels go, it's not exactly on par with like Terminator 3, but yeah, we'll
I think
see.
it makes Terminator 3 look a little more Citizen Kane-esque, but we'll see.
A little more coherent. Yes, we will definitely get to it. Anyway, for now, for those listening to it, sort of, and this is for those listening on the Patreon early doors, thank you very much for your support. As always, we greatly appreciate it. For those listening on the main feed when this comes out a little bit down the line, again, thank you very much for listening and your support. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. But go check out Patreon. There's so much on there. Leave a review for a start. Leave a 5-star review because I think this has been a well worth review. We've got 2 and a bit hours of stuff we've talked about Robocop 2, and hopefully we've sold it to you. So go leave a review and go check out the Patreon because there's so much more content on there. All these reviews, the rest of this Robocop series, other things we've done by this point, several of the seasons, and all the bonus stuff and all these other bits and pieces. So go check it out. Well worth checking out.
And if you like what we're doing, for the cost of a price of coffee at Starbucks, once a month, you get, years of stuff on that Patreon.
Oh yeah, absolute tons of stuff. So go check it out. Anyway, for now, Julian, thank you very much for discussing Robocop 2 with me.
Thank you. This was a special treat for me.
Yeah. And next week's going to be a bit of a disappointment, I think, really. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next episode.